We are now live on YouTube for the very first On The Time Lash's local group. Here we are, sitting in a pub. Myself, my colleague Mark, my wonderful friend Joe. There's no plan to this. It's just a live stream to kind of try and replicate the glory days of when we all used to hang out in Doctor Who pubs, Doctor Who local groups. That's it.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah, fabulous. Where did you guys used to hang out then? What groups did you used to hang out with?
That sounded very accusatory. What sort of groups did you hang out with?
Well, I never did. These are like the sort of podcast groups of our first group. So,
right, sure. I mean, it was always the Edinburgh group for Ben and I. That's where we met. That's where we met Derek as well. You know, the Digestial fun maker. So we all kind of met through that. Which was a great little group. We've talked about it in the podcast a few times, but it was in a few different pubs in Edinburgh over the years. I think it's still going on Monday nights.
It is. It's more so when Mark and I joined, there was various different. Let's do a rundown of the venues. It was the Claremont Bar. This is going to make sense to nobody except people from Edinburgh, and even then, most of these places are gone now. The Claremont Bar in Edinburgh, which is now, Mark reliably informs me, a Greek taverna.
Yes,
but it was one of the go-to gay bars in Edinburgh at the time.
It was.
Just
remember.
And it was
Keating. I went to see.
It was what?
So I went to see Michael Keating in that pub up the stairs.
Yeah.
So on Saturdays they would do events. They had like Jacqueline Pierce there, Gareth Thomas, Michael. There was a lot of Blake Seven crossover at the Edinburgh group.
Well, it had. I think in the heyday, you know, that kind of that wonderful period of not just like that kind of 90s. Everything, X-Files, Star Trek, Doctor Who, everything was popular. They used to have a Star Trek group and a Doctor Who group.
Time, right? The mid-90s.
Yeah, it was great.
But after Michael Keating was on the Saturday. Michael Keating, sorry, not Michael Keaton. That would have been a hell of a get. And I think it finished around like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock the day. And I remember Martin sort of hurriedly putting me in a taxi because I think it was about maybe 12, 13, because the strippers were about the male strippers were about to turn up for the evening. Because the Claremont used to have male strippers every Saturday night.
Your life could have been very different if you'd hung around.
You meet a Doctor Who actor, then afterwards stick around for a male stripper. What's not to like about that?
I don't want to sound unprofessional here. How do I share the link to this now? Come on, I'm going to send it out to everyone on socials as well.
What to Joe? I don't think we want that happening.
Well, it's a YouTube.
For all the gays out there, I'm going to get them all in now. I've got the StreamYard thing at the top there. Is it that link?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, what do you mean to actually join the chat or just to watch on YouTube?
I mean, what's the? Can you please explain this to me? Because can anyone just join in this now? Could you have like 50 people in this screen?
No, we can. So generally, I pay for the StreamYard, except I just wanted to see what this would be like. So I got the free version, and there's only 6 contributors allowed on screen at every one time.
People can watch on YouTube and sort of we want to kind of have it like a bit more social, bit more chatting.
And we do, in fact, have people joining us. What's on the tapes? Pete Dillon Trenchard. Hello, mate. It's now split into the Edinburgh Doctor Who local group, the Doctor Who Edinburgh local group, and the Doctor Who local group of Edinburgh.
Can I ask you what's on the tapes? Are you all at war with each other? Or do you all come together and have nice, calm Doctor Who conversations?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Yeah. It's also obviously Pete is joking, because I think the Edinburgh group nowadays is about 4 people, but that's
yeah. Although he's not wrong, because there used to be the public meeting on a Monday. This is also why we're doing this on a Monday, because that's when the Edinburgh group would meet, and it was always a nice kind of like end of the weekend, get you going for the week. But they would also have other meetings. Maybe I think it was on a Thursday or something for just people that got the nod, that weren't weirdos or psychos.
Yeah.
You know what the problem is, though, don't you? Is the reason why no one's doing it anymore because we're all doing this. We're all at home doing it virtually now.
Yeah,
that's true. And I mean, I think there was also a kind of a thing where, like, Richie and I are still kind of slowly working on this documentary, but I think there was an idea that those kind of local groups just kept the flame alive, so that when the show comes back, you're not kind of hard up for Doctor Who chat.
Yeah,
because it's back.
Oh,
it's really big and popular, and you don't need to huddle around a pub table and talk about Doctor Who. You can just talk about Doctor Who in your workplace or in your barbershop, anywhere, because everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, it went from weekly. It was weekly up until 2006, and then it went to monthly because there was so much Doctor Who. There was no need to meet every week. You could get your fix by I don't know, a regenerated Doctor Who magazine. Coming into Martin's shop, Voga, our friend Martin, the guy who used to run the Edinburgh group, had what started off as he ran a shop, what started off as a science toys for kids because he was a science teacher. It very quickly just became exclusively Doctor Who merch. You could buy as many Ardal O'Hanlons dressed as a space cat as you wanted from that establishment.
My dad used to go into that shop way more than I ever did. Like the amount of Doctor Who toys my dad bought in the sort of mid-2000s, because he, like as many men his age who weren't massive Doctor Who fans, when he was growing up, he had like a load of like Captain Scarlet toys, Star Trek toys, all those kind of like die-cast, dinky model things. And my gran threw them all away. And so he kind of held that as a kind of like slight against him, that he'd been kind of robbed of this inheritance that he could have cashed in because he'd watch the Antiques Roadshow every Sunday and he would see all these toys that he used to have going for like hundreds of pounds. So he was like, right, I'm going to do this with Doctor Who now. I'm going to get into the ground level. I'm going to buy all these Doctor Who toys. And I remember him. He had like a faceless Grandma Connolly. He had a Richard Wilson. I said to him, I was like, Dad, you are aware that these are mass produced now. There's literally no value to them whatsoever.
Do you know, we just discovered last week, right, that Mark's mum went up into the attic and found a load of boxed Star Wars toys. Wow. An enormous Millennium Falcon. I said, my God, that's going to be a bloody fortune. Yeah. So she's doing an inventory for us right now, and we may be moving to somewhat grander circumstances in the future. Thank God bless the mothers that keep everything, right?
That is the dream, isn't it? That is the dream, that all the shit that we collect in our lives is one day going to be that comfortable nest egg.
Yes.
No, all I've got is a load of big finishes, and they ain't going to be worth nothing to nobody. In fact, half of them are in your bloody time lash right now. So, no thing I didn't notice. You taking. Oh no, you didn't put Sophie Aldred in. Who is it who came out of the time lash that I put in there?
Well, now see, it was a complicated thing. So you put in the script, we salvaged the reputation of Nicholas Briggs. So both things can exist separately.
It is a fabulous, fabulous format. So I'm now marketing your own podcast on your podcast live stream. But I was listening back to your Mikey Smith one earlier when I was washing up. Oh, it's fabulous for that sort of thing, And God, he's hilarious, isn't he?
Yeah,
it's good value.
Old. And as soon as he said that, about 50 Doctor Who anecdotes were going through my head.
It's the bit where he says, Jane Baker, just made me laugh so much.
So who you got coming up in series 2 then?
Well, yeah, that's
a good answer.
There will be a series 2. And it'll probably just be the same sort of people that we normally have on the podcast. But I'm not sure when we're going to do it. That's because real life has happened. Ben has a baby. So we'll figure out. But I think Rod Brown, I definitely want to get on Rod because
Oh, he's whoring himself out everywhere now. I made that man, No, he's everywhere.
It's a shame when double acts, go their own separate ways, isn't it?
Ben, have you had the baby? Well, not you, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a little baby about he's literally 2 days ago. He was a month old. And wow.
How long did it? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but how long did it take for you to show them the Stones of Blood?
Oh, I mean, so there's been a lot of Doctor Who and general classic cult television on in the house. Just either as something to do between feeds, and you have to monitor, because you got to monitor the baby. You can't just like put them down and then leave the house. You got to be in the same room in the vicinity of the baby 24/7. So there's been a lot of Doctor Who. I've started to do a UK Gold kind of vibe where I get I watch like a full Doctor Who on a Saturday and a Sunday morning, and then just supplement it through the week with other stories that I like. But yeah, there was Doctor Who was stuck on the telly about 3 or 4 days after he arrived home. He hasn't watched any of it. But
its way possible, but that child does not have a hope of not being a fan of this stuff, does it?
I am beginning. He's now beginning to have little recognizable like features, facial features. And the other day, I definitely heard him kind of like look around in recognition of hearing.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Sort of 1 year old, give them a Dalek and let them just feel the bumps and the sticks and things like that. They'll be curious about those too.
And a couple of friends got him kind of Doctor Who branded little babies costumes and stuff as well. So those will be going on. He doesn't have a chance in hell. But yeah, it's been a month. It's been, to be honest, it's been a very difficult month, but it's been a great month. He's a nice kid, and I love him very much. If anyone was looking for any hot gossip about, oh my god, Ben doesn't like his kid. Nah, Ben loves his kid. It's great.
I hope your missus ain't watching this. Yeah, he's a nice kid. Yeah.
No, he is. We've had it's been like we've not done anything. I've been off work. We've been looking after him, you're up at all hours. But he's such a nice wee guy.
You look like a man who slept though. Look at you.
Well, I don't feel it. I certainly don't feel it. I did have a good night's sleep yesterday because we kind of swapped around how we do nighttime feeds, but it doesn't really do much. He likes looking out the window. He likes rolling about. That's it, really. That's.
I mean, he's a month old, for God's sake.
A month old and already inhaled the best part of BritBox's science fiction catalogue.
Oh, it's not even BritBox, mate. It's old school. It's physical media. That's
nice.
Sticking on the old Blu-rays and DVDs. That's what he's getting.
That's a good conversation point, actually, for anyone listening. Is what is the first Doctor Who you put on for a young child to suck them in? To get them absolutely gripped. Remembrance of the Daleks worked a treat on my little niece. Unfortunately, she loved the bit where Ace jumps through the window and is surrounded by the Daleks so much. I had to watch it like 50 times. Like again. I'm so sick to death of that cliffhanger now. And it's a great cliffhanger.
Is that where your hatred of Sophie Aldred originated?
It might be. That sort of face she pulls at the end of the episode, like she's got diarrhea. Like, it might just be seeing that over and over again.
Maybe.
Just we've got a couple of comments I'll put in there. Firstly, Daniel's watching. Hello, Daniel. Ben and Mark look like they've each bought their own pub. I wish.
If I bought my own pub, it would be bankrupt within the month because I would just be handing out pints to all my friends.
What pub is it? Is it the Coach and Horses? Is it?
Way nicely spotted. Yes, it is indeed the Coach and Horses in Soho, in which Tom Baker and John Hurt used to drink heavily in the 1970s.
I can't believe nobody's ever asked him, or have they? Has anyone, I know obviously Tom Baker, when he's at conventions, everybody, what's your favorite monster? All that bullshit. He's also quite a culturally, or he's been part of a quite culturally significant set. And I don't recall anybody ever asking him these questions or him talking about the people that he used to get fucking legless with.
Wonderful stories about that, doesn't he? About the lowlifes and the scum that he used to hang out with in the pubs.
Yeah.
You can imagine the smoke den and all the media types.
Yeah. Well, this Francis Bacon impression is legendary. He sort of does that kind of like nasally sort of Francis Bacon voice. But yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Like Doctor Who conventions. I remember we were at, was it the Capitol last year or the year before, and somebody asked Camille Kaduri what her memories were of working on Nuns on the Run.
We'd ask that question. Let's not piss about. We'd ask that question.
Don't you inwardly cringe whenever they say to the audience, right, put your hand up, who's got a question? I'd cringe before the questions come.
Yeah, there's always a sharp intake of, and I've done, I've hosted these things. Not at Doctor Who conventions, although I am making my Doctor Who convention debut in 2 weeks' time. But at film festivals, well, I'm hosting a Q&A with Dominic Glynn at Hooverville. So that should be cool. But yeah, it's weird, like the Q&A thing. You do have that kind of sharp intake of, please don't be shit, please don't be shit, please don't be shit. I once hosted a Q&A for a documentary about a guy who was like restoring a pier in his village. There's like a really sweet film about kind of getting the sort of like the older generation, get the younger generation involved in heritage and all this kind of stuff. So the film's really sweet. But hello, JR.
Hi, JR. Welcome to the pub.
Fucking name dropping already, are we? I'm just posting with the.
But no, one of the questions was, what type of wood did your grandfather use to restore the pier? And like the guy making the film was like, I don't fucking know, mate. I'm a film director. I'm not a. I'm not a timber.
The worst convention moment I ever had. We was at a convention, and it was Natasha from Revelation of the Daleks. You know, one of the two that are in there stealing the body. And my mate put his hand up and asked, because he's got a weird fixation with Jenny Thomason, who plays Tassin Beaker from that story. Because she's a fine actress. We've actually got Tassin Beaker coasters in the house. I should have brought one actually. They're everywhere. Anyways, and he asked her. He said, "What was it like working with Jenny Thomason?" And she went, "What do you mean by that?" Like that, and the whole room just went deathly quiet. And she goes, "She was a mentally ill woman." She went, and I don't think you should be asking those questions. And the poor guy doing the questions tried so hard to sort of pull it back from this, and she wouldn't stop. And we were right at the back of the hall, and she was right at the front, and the whole audience. It was just awful. She was never invited back. That was.
I love moments like that.
I'm gonna pull it back. When I went into work the other day, on the first day back after a fortnight off, clearly some parcel had come open and a book had fallen out. And instead of putting it back in the parcel, they'd just left it on my workstation. So now I want to know if this was supposed to be a message to me, if there's somebody there was describing me in the name of this book. But the book just
or something like that.
No, the book was called How to Finish Wood. Which, if it wasn't a book about wanking, I don't know what it was. That's somebody calling me a wanker, isn't it?
that Jenny Thomason thing, that's mad. It's kind of like
it was awful.
The Android Invasion Day panel.
Brilliant.
The John Levine one, where a guy in the audience went, John, and a guy in the audience who either knew exactly what he was doing or was just very sweetly naive and had never heard John Levine talk about Tom Baker, but and I just wonder, like, what were the differences between working with John Pertwee and Katie Manning and working with Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen and fucking Levine's face? And he was already very well, but his face just went like ashen. He was like, "Let me tell you about Tom Baker," and he started going on this sort of like diatribe about how Tom Baker used to run the rehearsal room like a concentration camp. And it was like spoken like somebody who's never been to a concentration camp or read about them, I think.
Plus, can you imagine Tom Baker being in charge in the rehearsal room?
No. I thought you were going to say somebody ask him, what do you think of Boris Johnson or something like that? I mean, I've heard some interviews of his recently, and geez, I can't believe they put those things out.
It's I think I know the one you mean.
I take it you're not on the record yet, right?
No, we are. And we've got a comment now here from John Levine. You dickheads. Oh, he's gone.
He was the headline guest at the Android Invasion Day, which was a great day.
The only fucker that was in it.
He was the only guy who was in it. And I think they had to cut his panel short at about 25 minutes because also he was on medication, and there was like 3 or 4 times that looked like he was going to faint live in a church hall in a village, and it was like, this. We probably need to stop this.
Yeah, there was a slight risk of a Tommy Cooper situation.
Did you eat in that pub there? What's the place called? Didcot? Did you eat in there?
In the Fleur de Lis, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Did you have a nice roast? Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah. Daniel, sorry, that is as a comment. Daniel, the worst Q&As are when they go, I have a question. Well, it's not actually a question. It's more of an observation in 2 parts that'll take 5 minutes to describe. We all know those guys. We all know those guys.
I've done that.
I've known.
I was going to look at you as well, JR. Then, do you know?
I have seen Q&A hosts going, well, I did ask for a question, so if you could.
I tend to when I used to do the interviews for Starburst, I used to be afraid that they were going to take the question as a dig, and so I would answer the question for them so they could see what I was getting at. But by which point, by the time they'd worked out what I was getting at, I'd already answered the question, so they had to think of another question instead, didn't I? But you know, because there's so many questions you can ask Doctor Who people that sounds like a dig, when what you're really doing is trying to open the floor for them to give their perspective on something, right?
Yeah.
What was the most diggy sounding question that you asked that wasn't a dig?
Chris Chibnall, are you the Pip and Jane Baker of the modern era?
And what was the answer?
Slightly flustered, I'm not sure what you mean. But then he went on and gave me a 5-minute anecdote about Pip and Jane Baker, so it wasn't bad.
Of all the regrets in his life, going on that open air show and talking about John of the Time Lord, I mean, that must be his biggest regret in life.
He wrote to them afterwards to apologise when he went to university to learn about sort of drama and stuff.
I just hear that they are
very funny, Fraser. Very funny. They weren't called opal fruits at the time, but yes. What was I saying? Oh no, he wrote to them afterwards when he went to university to do drama or whatever it was he was doing. I think it was drama, and he basically got into a long sort of pen pal conversation with them that went on for ages, I think.
Oh,
so
nice.
Like to apologise or to just.
Which, if anybody wants to hear the anecdote, it's on a very early episode of the Strangers in Space podcast.
Oh, here he goes. It won't be the last, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh, hold on a second. Oh, I've just worked out how to put it on full screen. I've never done this before.
God, hey! I mean, I hope it doesn't get into a round system because we've got a few more in. Hello, Dylan.
Oh,
no, Dylan's looking deadly serious there.
He looks so serious.
He looks like he's been caught on a nanny cam doing something that he shouldn't have been.
I like his little subtitle, though. Chibnall apologist.
He is.
I don't think you need to apologise for your taste.
Exactly. What is there to apologise for? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Grow up. It's just a TV program.
That's the spirit.
But that was, yeah. See, that's
Are
what
you
I
in the sheds, JR?
Sorry?
Or a garage? Are you in your garage?
Basically.
Yeah, nice.
I mean, I can elaborate on that if you want me to.
You've been thrown out?
No. Our house, the person before us in our house started to convert the garage, but he never finished it. So we have a half-converted garage, which we basically use as a storeroom filled with all sorts of crap. And at one end of the garage, there's a window, and that's where I do the podcast, because it's the quiet room in the house. Oh, this is going to be confusing, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, doing. That shouldn't be.
Now you look like you've been caught on a nanny cam.
Okay, so we've also got.
This is where we realised that Ben was actually an imposter, the evil doppelganger.
It's Pete Dylan Trenchard, everybody.
He's only in the
bloody. Well, I've been pickled in time like gherkins in a jar.
That's the Winchester, isn't it?
No, it's the Queen Vic.
It's the Queen Vic.
Oh, the Queen
Vic.
Come on.
I thought it was a Simon
Yours
Pegg
just
reference.
generic Irish pub, Ben, or does it have a?
Yeah, it is. There's a pub called O'Neill's. I just googled pub, and this picture of O'Neill's comes up. But it's quite fitting. I love O'Neill's. When I travel into Dublin to
Wait,
do
hang on.
gigs,
I presume this is an actual pub called O'Neill's rather than the chain of Irish themed.
I was going to say the
No,
chain
it
is
is a-
barely a pub.
pubs.
it is a
Right,
pub
yeah,
called
right.
O'Neill's. It's just a pub, but it's also got some of the best and most secret toilets that you can use if you're needing a wee in the centre of Dublin, and you don't want to have to. They're kind of right beside the door, so you don't even have to go past the bar. Nobody knows that you're using those and not a customer. It's great.
Just booking that. Ben
That's a good
Verse,
tip.
secret toilets.
I was actually making a note of that. Actually, thank you.
That's my Tuesday night live that we're going to do.
I'll be
Ben
there.
versus Secret Toilets.
It's a good YouTube video essay series. We're just Ben Worth takes you into secret toilets of the United Kingdom and Ireland.
I think you might get a fair viewership, actually.
I remember having the idea for having like a guide to like the best free toilets in a given city before
this a
I knew.
Seinfeld?
Yeah, before I knew that George had the same idea in Seinfeld. I was convinced. I was like, people need to know this. Like, the Museum of Scotland, you can go right in. Like, Fraser Gregory, love how Dylan just popped up to stare at you all, then bugger off. I mean,
Yeah, he's enough at this.
how you doing, Pete? Are you okay? You good?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm not gonna bring me problems here, you know. Yeah, I'm all right.
Shared space, don't worry.
It just fell off his chair.
Yeah,
It's
I was
Doctor Who local group.
I mean there we go. I haven't been on camera doing a stream or anything for quite a long time, so yeah, this is
Never done it.
Hold on.
Dylan Reese has popped up on the chat. Have you seen it? It just says, "I am here."
I am here. I'm about to... Oh, and then he's disappeared again. He has disappeared again.
Beckett, best, isn't it?
Is Ben the one with the power to
I
add
sure am.
people and subtract them?
Yeah, so I have the screen here, and then I also have a mobile device here. That's why you saw two of me briefly, so that
You
I
are
can be a
aware,
bit
Ben,
more.
that if you've only got a maximum of 6, you're going to have to kick out your management account to let Dylan in, right?
No, it's 6 on screen. Here he is. He's back, I think. Is he? Let's find out.
Hello.
Is he here? Yes, he is.
Hey, there he is.
I like to make a grand entrance.
And
That was
for
it.
some reason you didn't bother.
It was the equivalent of staring at us through the window for ages before you came into the pub,
It
like
was
finishing
really
a
unnerving.
cigarette or a phone call.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
I just knocked a cable that sent my whole computer out soon.
Oh, fair enough. But no, that was what Dylan did there was what the Edinburgh local group used to do back in the day, where you have the first meeting, which is usually just the guys with the carrier bags wanting the pirate copies of like The Invasion. And then if you're not a weirdo, they invite you to the next week's meeting, which was just all the cool kids. I mean, as much as Doctor Who fans can be cool kids, obviously.
How did you determine what a weirdo was or not?
I wasn't active in those days.
If you turned up, you wouldn't be invited to the next week's meeting.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, so that was it. So at the start, I said that there was a separate meeting on another day. But that wasn't the case. It was that it was officially monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And if they liked you, you were invited to the other 3 in the month. It was actually a weekly meeting, but for people who just showed up, it's like wink, wink. It's only monthly.
Did you have oh god, I'm going to say this live, a Levine though in your group? Because I went to one group in Brighton and there was it wasn't Ian Levine, but it was a Levine type figure who was in charge of the whole thing and essentially was telling everybody what they were supposed to think about Doctor Who. And you know me, I wasn't going to stay there and be told what to think about Doctor Who, so I just went, and the opposite. But
I can't believe Joe talked right through the one and only moment this evening of striptease that we're going to get.
What did I miss? What did I miss?
I took my jumper off. I mean, you say one and only. I'm open. You know.
Keep going.
There's more.
Let's have a few more.
Exactly.
Joe doesn't realise this, but I took my shorts off about a minute into this. I am completely naked from the waist down.
Yeah, but
None
you
of us
did that when we
realise
were live recording in your house, so I'm used to that. But no, was there anyone who was in charge of the groups, or was it all just very flat?
So well, there was our friend Martin was the president of the group, which I believe he staged a hostile takeover at one stage to get that role is what I've heard. But it was very informal. Like it was just
there was definitely a division of like kind of old school Doctor Who fans and then like new young kind of hipster folks. Like it's not a dig, but it was always funny that when like younger people would come along and they would talk about the BBC books or the new adventures or the Big Finish, Gordon Gordon would always be like, not proper Doctor Who, and just going to close down the conversation. He just
boo.
He's a nice guy, but he just would close down. Yeah.
I suppose now it would be a division between sort of new and classic, right? That's what you'd have if there were big fan groups coming together now.
It's not even new and classic. It's RTD1 versus RTD2.
There you go. We know which one Dylan will be going to, don't we?
It's true.
Yeah.
What can I say? I used to go to a fan group in Birmingham called the Wolves of Fenric. It was a lot of fun, and it had some esteemed alumni, including Toby Haydock and Dan Hadley.
When you say esteemed,
going so well then.
Yeah, it was going so well up until just about when you said "and" after Toby Haydock.
Just out of question, the pub there did it like on some weeks host the Wolves of Fenric and then on other weeks host like the EDL?
No, just kidding. It was a gay bar. It was a gay bar on Hurst Street.
Fenric and the fucking Lions of Albion or whatever it was.
It was a gay bar, much like I believe the bar you guys used to go to was, and they had the Doctor Who local group upstairs.
It's almost as if there's some kind of correlation between gay men and Doctor Who fandom, but
no, I've never seen it.
Given you look at the representation on this call, we're failing miserably here, aren't we? 1.5, I think we are, and I'm not saying who the half is. All right.
But hey, rest assured, we're all still white. So
yes.
Some things don't change.
I might be joining us then soon.
It's good that we've got a few ladies on the call, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was promised chicks. That's what they said. All the chicks are coming.
Dylan's obviously not the half a gay man, then, isn't he?
The reason that I don't hang around with chicks is because I say the word chicks.
No, that's the reason chicks don't hang around with you, Dylan. It's not the other way around.
What, Dylan? What was the makeup of your Birmingham group?
Perverts mainly. It was. I would say there was I was about 12, and I reckon there was another bunch of kids there. I reckon there was probably 3 or 4 other 12-year-olds.
This story cannot end well. Go on.
It ends fine.
I was about 12 when I went to my first Doctor Who group meeting. I was never nonced.
He started this story with perverts. That's where he started, and then he started talking about 12-year-olds.
It was all harmless fun, There'd be 25, but the thing is, everybody else seemed really old, but I presume they were younger than I am now. So, I think there were probably people men in their 30s. They were very clear that they weren't a Dwas local group. I think they had some sort of beef with the Dwas, or maybe they were an offshoot. But everywhere seemed to have a Dwas local group back then.
Was there not a period of that, where you had to be Dwas? Well, you didn't have to be Dwas affiliated, but there was a kind of. Because I remember you gave me all those old Celestial toy rooms, and there's loads of like listings of sort of Doctor Who local groups in the back of those old Celestial toy rooms, which presumably have, paid Dwas to advertise or whatever. But yeah,
they were everywhere.
It's quite a small.
You had a choice. Either you affiliated to Dwas, or Jeremy Benton would come round and knock your legs out.
looking for danger money.
Now there was.
Oh, Dylan, you've gone silent.
You've knocked your microphone out.
Network.
Oops. Start that again. You lost your microphone.
There was.
Are you knocking cables again?
I'm not knocking anything.
Are you acquainted with a book called How to Finish Wood?
Can you all hear me fine now? Or am I still...
Yep.
Right. There was another Doctor Who fan club like the Dwas called Dwin, which was the Doctor Who Information Network. I'd love to know how many members it had, but I've got some of their newsletters somewhere.
When they folded, they described it as the Dwin Dilemma.
Oh, it was due to dwindling numbers.
Oh, fucking! I was going to go there.
I'm going to see if the Dwin still exists. Give me a second.
I think it probably does.
The Brighton and Hove Doctor Who Appreciation Society or something was called Badwaz, which is kind of a cool Doctor Who villain name, really.
Yeah. But I'd like to roll it back to the moment where Dylan asked if we could hear him, but never followed it up with the obvious question, do you want to?
Well, yeah, fair.
I'm just here to be horrible to people.
Hello,
That's Joe's job.
Cat.
Yeah, sorry, we got so we're salutations to Toymaker's Cat. I'm going to say we've got 6 people on screen. We've got a fair few people watching as well. So this has worked out just as we planned. Some nice ambient Who vibes with some drinks for a couple hours. I mean, it's only 8 o'clock. We've only been going half an hour. I don't know how the fuck we're getting till 10 o'clock, but
yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how long it takes for the Type 40 style racism to kick in, and we'll go from there.
Wow. Are you starting a podcast beef? Is this what's happening here? Are you starting a war?
I mean, I'm unemployed now, so
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it looks like the Dwin have migrated to Canada, but there's only 842 members now. So let's all sign up tonight. We'll get them up to 850.
Are they all in Canada?
It looks like it, yeah.
Maybe it was always in Canada.
I mean, it doesn't scream fun, that name, does it?
Dwin?
I mean, Doctor Who Appreciation Society. Oh, yeah, I get what we're up to. The Doctor Who Information Network. Sounds like there's a lot of fucking admin involved.
Doctor Who Appreciation Society scream fun, though. I just
more than Information Network. I mean, Doctor Who Information Network sounds like you're meeting on a fucking park bench and swapping attache cases. Like, it doesn't sound...
But
it's all about
Appreciation Society always makes me laugh as a phrase. You say, "Oh, we're all a member of a society that appreciates something." So it's not that exciting.
It's all about
appreciate something.
It's all about the acronym. I'm going out for some Dwin. Doesn't sound anything like as saucy as I'm going out to get me some Dwas.
Whereas bad
Dwas, you're saying your acronym is CIS.
UTI. I mean.
And also, the members of the Dwas don't do a lot of appreciating, do they? It's more
appreciating. In fact, given the reaction to Empire of Death, you could start the Doctor Who Depreciation Society, couldn't you? And there'd probably be more members.
What, as in the depreciating returns of Russell T Davies?
That sounds like a sitcom. That sounds like an 8:30 ITV sitcom starring one of the McGann brothers.
Watch.
But probably not the one you were expecting.
The other day, I put Empire of Death on a list of the 20.
I thought you were going to say I put Empire of Death on, and I thought, no, don't do it to yourself.
I put it at number 20 just to not be like that contentious. But I put it on, right, this list of like the 20 worst episodes of Modern Doctor Who, right? And the responses to this list, and I know it's all just people. It really made me laugh because it's this list just seems like the choices of one person's 20 worst episodes. 20 least I hate to and that's what all of these lists are.
What else is on your list, Mark?
I've still got.
You can't tease us with this.
We want to know what the other 19 were.
We'll get to the list. Don't worry. But also, I do have all of the sort of most recent DWM polls here. So I pulled most of it from the bottom rungs of those. Of going, oh yeah, that one's shit. That one's not as bad as people say it is. So that's not going in. Love and Monsters, for example, I didn't put in. And so I had people in the comments on YouTube kind of going, God, like, thank God. Finally, people are starting to see Love and Monsters for the classic that it truly is. And I was a bit like, it's bottom 40. It's just not bottom 20. All right, that's. But thanks.
Do you ever get an intelligible response to any of those articles? Like, do you ever get anyone intelligent writing in?
It's funny. So the stuff that I do for What Culture, because I've left Screen Rant now. And because the comments on those articles were literally by just Heed the Boz or insane people to non-Scottish viewers. But the YouTube ones are interesting because they're all read out by Ellie, who's very good, and an attractive woman talking about Doctor Who on the internet is a very interesting. It's very interesting to look at those comments and see sort of men sort of like going, oh my God, like you have such an incredible knowledge of Doctor Who. Like your knowledge of Doctor Who is unbound. What an incredible mind that you have. And I'm like, I wrote that script, mate. You want to shag me. You don't want to shag her.
And do they kind of go, you've got such incisive knowledge of Doctor Who, and do you by any chance live anywhere near Margate?
Well, I don't live near Margate anymore.
Her. I've got to say, I saw that article came up in my, spam list thing on, my phone, and I thought, oh, thank goodness for that, because it's on What Culture. Clearly, that won't be one by Mark, because he'd never write anything as dumbass as that.
Oh, I'll take the thing, because I love warming people up. I love, like, genuinely the fun thing about What Culture is they just let me say whatever I want. So the YouTube stuff's really fun because you do just get people quite upset over like little innocuous digs or daft gags or whatever. But yeah, just that guy saying like, oh, this is somebody's personal list. It's like, yeah, mate, everything's subjective. I hate to break it to you.
Are you gonna do a follow-up article, the 20 Doctor Who episodes that aren't the 20 worst Doctor Who episodes? Because that's the
I think I'm doing the 20. I think I'm doing the 20 worst classic ones next, so that should be fun. I'm trying to think how I can wind people up with that one.
Genesis, darling, couldn't there? Genesis, Talons, Caves.
Well, because at the end of the day, right?
Just before you go on, it's got to be the 20 worst Doctor Who episodes, and then in really, 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 really small print by Robert Holmes.
We got a reader for you, Mark, giving a compliment there. What I like about Mark's list is he did find nice things to say about lots of the episodes in there. Number one is quite a topical choice, though. What was number one?
Come on, countdown.
Well, number one was Fear Her. And I didn't mention Hugh Edwards, although there is another list coming, which is genuinely the wildest tonal gear shift thing I've ever written in my life, which encompasses, what does it encompass? Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards, Noel Clarke,
John Barrowman,
Doctor in Distress. I don't think John Barrowman, but yeah, basically just, like awkward sort of Doctor Who things that we'd rather just forget about.
I really want to read that.
I look forward to Ellie Littlechild reading that list out to see. Dylan's popped off, but he's going to miss this. But Toymaker's Catchist has given us a brilliant new catchphrase. I've never been part of an official Doctor Who group, so prefer pub meetups at bars and conventions. I am a big Finnish ho, though.
No, he's a Finnish big ho.
Oh, sorry, I read that incorrectly. Right.
Oh, yeah, he always comments on the YouTube. But hello, Mr. Toymaker's Hat. Very nice to meet you. Not meet you. You're here, but you're not.
Very
here.
nice to meet you.
Hello.
And is indeed having a Levine a euphemism for something?
I think it's a euphemism for several things.
Is Levine on your list of awkward moments? Surely.
It's the Doctor in Distress is because and what's really funny about Doctor in Distress, which I'd forgotten about, is if you read Richard Marson's biography of John Nathan Turner, the chapter on Doctor in Distress talks to Paul Tams, who says it was his idea, and then it immediately, like, Marson goes to Ian Levine and goes, "Well, that's bullshit. It wasn't Paul Tams' idea," and then goes on to talk about how embarrassed he is by it. I said, "Well, if you were that embarrassed, you would allow Paul Tams to take the blame for it, Ian. But instead, what you've done is you said, 'Oh, it was Gary and John's idea, and they forced me into it, and it was terrible. But I wrote all the lyrics though, and I produced it. But it was terrible. It was a terrible idea, you know.'"
And it's one of my most watched bits of Doctor Who ephemera ever. Doctor in Distress.
Oh.
Everybody's embarrassed by it. They even keep it in the bloody video. They're all laughing at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, as I say in the list, it's like there's a reason that it was on Channel 5 during the 60th anniversary and not on BBC 4. Like it's not something anybody wants to remember.
I can hear someone talking. Can you?
An argument in the background.
Is the telly on behind you, Mark?
Oh, I think that's downstairs at mine.
Oh.
Well, you are in the clinic, so I mean, it would only be right for there to be an argument.
It's not an argument, but I think there's work-related drama.
Nice. Well, that's what we're here to talk about anyway, isn't it? Just somebody else's work, really.
My mum's.
What is everyone drinking, by the way? Just for the evening.
I am having Birra Moretti Sale de Mar. Oh, it's disappeared.
I'm very boring, but I've just got a coffee.
Well, I finished my tea.
Tonight. I need a clear head. I'm recording a podcast on a terrible, terrible book.
Later on tonight?
Huh?
Later on tonight?
In about 10 minutes' time, yeah.
Oh, wow. What's the book? Oh, wow. One of those. Yeah.
I don't need to know which one it is. It's like, yeah, that checks out.
Book might be pushing it a little bit, but yeah.
Is that the one you were sending little bits of text to the strangers group chat from?
No, that was The Stranger by Portia de
No, there was definitely an Andy Frank. And
yeah, this is the only one I've read. This is the only one I'm ever going to read.
Right.
That's your review.
Yeah.
I did once try reading just a couple of pages where they supposedly kind of tried to resolve the unit dating thing, and it was just, I think there were all kinds of brigadiers, and the Doctor was there but not by name, and it was terrible.
There was a 2-page preview in a Doctor Who magazine, wasn't there? And I got approximately as far through that preview as Pete got through the book itself.
That's weird to me so Doctor Who magazine has this kind of like, I don't know if it still does, but it was definitely a policy for a while where they would only kind of cover, like, Big Finish was the kind of official, unofficial thing. And so, like, you would only get, like, Matthew Jacobs' documentary. I think there was maybe like an interview, but it was a lot of it was kind of just reduced to kind of those byline things. Going, "Oh, this is on if you want to buy tickets."
He's going to go and shut the door.
We're here for the drama. Something's going down. Come on.
You get that in pubs, you get people in the background chatting.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
But so it's weird to me that Doctor Who magazine would have like a preview of. I mean, I know it's kind of the Hazeman Lincoln estate, but it seems odd that they kind of back that kind of stuff because they don't review.
I think
it,
at this point, it's the equivalent of any old Winectory card, isn't it? It's
or any old family member that has, access to the estate of a fictional character.
Or
I'm
any
amazed
old-
Steph Coburn hasn't sold off the rights to the Tribe of Gum as a series yet.
I've just bought them.
Oh, excellent!
Is
There
that
we
why
go.
you went away?
Yeah, there's a 15-part audio series coming next year, starring Lawrence Fox.
Does that mean, like, just with the Steph Coburn thing, could we have a situation like we had with Never Say Never Again, that kind of alternate universe James Bond movie, where we, like, Steph Coburn could sell the rights to An Unearthly Child, and like a whole rival Doctor Who universe could be created just out of that.
No,
That
because
one.
he doesn't own the rights to anything that's interesting or relevant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
this
He
is-
doesn't
this
own the
is
rights
the-
to any characters or the TARDIS or
No.
Yeah, all
Just-
that stuff came first. Although he does claim the TARDIS as his dad's, doesn't he?
But
Yeah.
that was thrown out of court when he took them.
Oh,
to
was
court
it? Okay.
Specifically about the TARDIS.
yeah, because he brought that to court. Was that in 2013, like during the
Yeah,
50th?
yeah.
I seem to remember.
Can't wait to see what he's got planned for the 70th.
He owns the words that are spoken, but he doesn't own anything else. Everything else is owned by the BBC. The characters, the sets, the photography, the music, everything else is owned by the BBC.
So none of the cave people. He couldn't do like a Za and Cal
he owns
televisual
them.
spin-off.
Might be able to, but I'm not sure because it depends what the deal was. Because they had different deals, didn't they, for all sorts
Yeah.
of different things. And I think in those very early days, I think the BBC probably do own the characters.
No, I'm
I
pretty
could be
sure
wrong.
he owns the characters. I could be wrong, but
What the sort of non-Doctor Who cat? Like
yeah,
guest.
so he can do a
I
series
don't
with
know,
Old
though, 'cause
Woman.
they've popped up in a few things since, haven't they? I'm pretty sure there was a comic strip which used some of the Tribe of Gum.
Yeah.
There may have even been a recent Big Finish audio, which
Uh-oh.
Didn't Star and Kal-El turn up in Superman the movie as well?
Yep.
There is one writer where nobody knows where their estate is, and that's William Ems. So if you want to license the Chumberleys or the Dravins, you basically have to. You can't do it. So you have to basically put aside the money, and then if the estate comes after you one day, but
Right.
nobody knows who owns his estate.
So does this mean I can make Abducted by the Rills then?
Yes.
That is a great euphemism. I'd like to license those Chumbleys. I'd like to.
You just think of the sequels. Real Gone Kid, you really got me.
Galaxy
Look,
5.
Can I just say, Real Gone Kid, chef's kiss. It immediately went downhill after that.
Wow. I had 20 seconds to think of it. I wasn't going to get very far.
You did well. If that sounded faintly patronising, it was.
Is that the only Doctor Who writer that you can, like, Big Finish would have to kind of just set aside some money for if they wanted to use any of the?
Apparently so. So I was told that most of the IP from the classic series has been bought up by a company called The Agency on behalf of the BBC, and they won't like if you and me want to make a Taran Woodbeast spin-off, which we do, they wouldn't license it to us, but they would license it to DWM or Big Finish and things like that. So they basically look after everybody's IP on behalf of the BBC and the estates, but Bill Baggs can't get up to his old tricks or anything like that.
That's
At
what
what
happens
point
when
did the
people
agency step in then?
when
Sorry,
downtime came out. Clearly, I mean, they took one look at downtime and said, "This must never happen again."
No, it was 2 years before the new series. Around 2003, they started
So
mopping
Scream of the
things up.
Shalka.
Quite possibly, but I think it was the BBC knew they wanted to do something with Doctor Who in the next few years, and so they just started to mop them up.
Makes sense.
Toby Haydock could have found him. I mean, what are these documentaries on the Blu-rays for? If not,
Yeah.
Toby Haydock getting to the bottom of where William M's children live.
Well, they've got to put something on that season 3 box set because it sure as hell isn't going to be anything that our good friend Ian Lee's putting together.
Talking of those extras, can you believe? I told Dylan this in the week. My other half had his parents down, and he made them watch all 90 minutes of the Doctor Who escape room special feature. Lisa Bowman, Maureen O'Brien, Peter Purvis in like a Crystal Maze set for 90 minutes.
Are Mark's parents fans of escape rooms?
They really love him. Really do.
I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I got 11 minutes into that before I lost the
I
will to
still
live.
haven't watched any of it.
I enjoyed it for how arsey both Maureen O'Brien and
Peter
Peter
Purvis, right?
were.
What a patronizing. Well, I won't say it. I don't know how explicit we can be. He was so sexist to the pair of them.
Well, he's watching tonight. He's watching.
He had big alpha male energy. It was, yeah.
God.
Oh, Jesus, it's
But
half
season
half.
one-
I hate to be predictable. I'm going to leave a load of Doctor Who fans to go and talk to a Doctor Who fan.
Okay, I hope we're a better lot of Doctor Who fans.
Oh, it's Michael Mills, and we're talking about this. Fabulous
wow.
book. So, you know,
Have a lovely
Yeah.
time.
it's gonna be
Send him
fun.
my kindest regards.
I'll tell him you'll see him tomorrow. All
I will.
right. See you later, guys.
See you then.
Yeah,
See you next
bye.
month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Michael
Hey,
Mills,
what?
did he play bass for REM?
Can we? I don't know if this is one of the things that we don't want to talk about or do want to talk about, but if you,
I wasn't aware there was an agreed topic.
We're just doing gossip and bitching, aren't we?
well, yeah, but it's just like just Mikey Smith's wife, when we were at Android Invasion Day, was telling amazing stories about how pissed Peter Purvis can get without showing it.
Before we get into this, he told me this on his first episode of Too Hot for TV and then asked me to cut it. So I'm going to politely suggest.
That's it. That's the end of that then.
We'll have this going in an actual pub and not recorded for posterity.
Yeah.
But at least put it in the WhatsApp chat. I mean,
You can ask Mikey. You can ask Mikey.
Although I do have a copy of Peter Purvis's autobiography, Behind the Bar.
This is what I love about green screen, is that it actually looks like you can just grab it from fucking.
Then he disappears into the ether like a ghost.
Here he comes.
Are you gonna read from a random page?
Nice.
Oh, shall I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flick it and tell us to stop.
And
Right,
then
okay,
don't
yeah,
forget,
yeah,
we
right.
need
Sorry,
your top
flick
20
it and
worst-
tell us to stop, Dylan. Is that?
Are you acquainted with a book called How to Finish Wood?
All right. He's going to tell me to stop flicking.
Stop.
Okay. Oh, this is a bit boring. This is just about how he got the job in Blue Peter. Although,
Aloud, Mark. Read it aloud.
Right, I'm just trying to find a good bit to. Right. Learning lines had never been much of a problem for me following my time in repertory, so I had learned it pretty well overnight. The audition covered a number of the main elements that one may be required to deal with in a typical program: talking straight to camera and giving some information, having a conversation with a co-presenter. I had gone weak at the knees meeting Val for the first time. Demonstrating something, in this case, a new kind of moped. I mean, I want a whole chapter on that. What kind of, like, what amazing advances have there been in mopeds technology by this stage? It's surely
They're all the same, right?
yeah.
Never been on a moped, clearly.
And then I'm linking into and out of filmed inserts with voiceover commentary. Pretty comprehensive. I'm sure you'll agree.
I do.
Well,
I didn't
feel
have to
so
bounce on
up
the
at wrong
ubiquitous
moment.
trampoline, but just about everything else was included.
Now, can you read it in the style of Peter Purvis, really pissed off that no one can figure out the red and green lights?
I'm seeing
I'm
what
not-
autobiographies I've got here.
I'm going to see. Right, all right. Do you want another page?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, that's a nice little image. Just Purvis out with his dogs. Wholesome.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna hold it up, Mark. I'm just gonna solo lay out you for a second so everyone can see that.
Oh, hang on. Let me turn the background off because that'll be easier, won't it?
And for those of you at home,
Oh,
Look
there
at
it is.
that.
Hold on.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that a lovely image
on.
of a man at peace walking his dogs out in the woods?
That's a lot of dogs. How many dogs is it?
It's 4 dogs. He's got Hattie, Dottie, Woody, and Teddy. Bit unimaginative names, but I'll let him off.
Well, what would you call the dogs then?
I don't know.
Yeah, name the.
I don't know.
Shep.
Do you know what? I'd tell you what.
Oh no, Mark's frozen.
Oh,
He's
he's
turned
gone.
into a telesnap.
I'd tell you wouldn't go to a breeder. That's all I'm saying.
We can AI reconstruct and we have the technology.
I'm just glad that he came back. Just
Yeah,
exactly
I like
at
how,
the moment where he said, "I'm not a breeder."
No,
We've already established that's Ben.
One of the fun things about, I mean, I haven't actually read this yet, but one of the fun things that I noticed when I first opened the Purvis autobiography is that each chapter has a kind of bullet pointed list of what the chapter will cover. So, chapter 6, the streets aren't paved with gold. My son is born. Interesting.
Nice.
Interesting. Those appear on the same line with a
That's
semicolon between them.
and a half.
Touring, no money, and a dreadful show at the Palladium. First TV work, moving again, a big break and a big disappointment. Hello, Doctor Who. Again, very interesting use of the semicolon.
I mean, it's good that he goes into all of those things in such depth. My son is born in a chapter with 15 other subheadings.
Happiest day of my life, honest.
I pulled a book off the Matthew Woodhouse's Blue Box Boy, and I promise you, I've opened it at this page completely by accident, and I'd like to read you a little excerpt.
Please do.
When you say it's by accident, did it fall open at the page that you have most well thumbed and thus
Well,
the slide is
maybe.
broken out?
It's all written in the first person. Matthew would lie on his stomach on his bed and read Low Life every week. In
Do you
between
mean the third person, Dylan?
I saw him
Yeah.
moving forward, and I knew he was going to do it. And I was like, don't you fucking dare. But he did it.
Matthew would lie on his stomach on his bed and read Low Life every week in between homework and masturbation and Doctor Who novels, comics and Hammer horror film reviews. It was splendidly sordid. It was described as Matthew's perfect vision of life.
Nice.
I mean,
So basically, he's just wanking surrounded by Target books. We've all been there, right?
We've all done it. We've all done it.
what's the sexiest Target novel? I don't know.
Armageddon Factor. It's got like a pale little palette to it. Just really pushes my buttons.
Wow.
Sorry, Joe, just before we move on, Joe might be with Michael Mills, but he's really thinking of us. I meant to say, you guys are all fabulous. Keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing.
Oh,
What a
very nice.
guy.
Anyway, wanking. What books would we?
I'm the book I turned to. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Leap Years: The Symphony of My Life.
900 pages. 900 pages.
I think it's 960 or something. It's closer to 1,000. 100 chapters.
I mean, if you want to know what I wank to, I just need to ask again, don't I? If you're acquainted with a book called How to Finish Wood. Dylan doesn't know, but this book actually exists.
Great. Send me a copy. Not your copy, though. You dirty.
There's always that companions book that Nicola Bryant refuses to sign.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough.
There's a lot of
Which
sexy
has
pictures in that.
There's a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that it was one of my favorite books as a teenager, but
But it's also that thing of you saw sexy pictures in that you didn't know you needed to see, like Sarah Sutton or Carol Ann Ford.
The Carol
It's
Ann
like, we
Ford
all
one's
know who
pretty
the typical
saucy. I
sexy
mean,
companions are. And then you've got like, oh, you ever thought about sexy Nissa? Tell you what, 14-year-old Dylan thought about sexy Nissa.
the Carol Ann Ford one is a revelation. That's all I'll say.
Nissa's the one who strips just before she leaves.
Yeah, that's true. But
Are you saying you didn't have thoughts before you saw this book? You were obviously the wrong age.
no, I'm not into Lazarus. Oh, terrible. Oh, I feel bad just for making that joke.
Not as bad as we do.
Just the thought of being aroused during Terminus just doesn't sit right with me.
I don't know. The Garm's got a certain appeal. Just leave that there.
Sarah Sutton, Mark Strickson, the Garm. There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Tegan.
Yeah. She's quite.
Why did she take her skirt off? I never had any sexy
4 minutes.
thoughts. It was all just about the logistics of the plot. Why did she take her skirt off?
She was really hot because she was ill, but presumably she was only hot around her vagina. That's the only
Yeah.
thing I could.
Yeah, one of those illness vaginal sweats that people get. Yeah, that.
She needed to mop her brow, so she decided to do it with the thing that she'd been sitting on.
I think Sarah Sutton was like, right, now to make sure I don't get typecast, here's so I can do something else. Yeah.
You know what Sarah Sutton did straight after Doctor Who? She became a travel agent. That's how much she wasn't typecast. She wasn't even cast. Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
I find, I obviously talked about this with Luke when we were talking about the John Levine book, but I do find that quite interesting. That kind of like you're on one of the most popular BBC shows of all time, and then you kind of you can't get any other acting work, and you got to take other gigs. So like Nick Courtney was working like a gentleman's like clothing shop and things like that. John Levine was like a private detective, and then a bingo caller, and then a fucking just a guy that drove his girlfriend around to Warner Brothers Studios until 9/11 happened, and he wasn't allowed through the gates anymore.
I can't imagine John being like a private anything. Like,
he's the most public man that anyone's ever met.
Did you think he wore that really colourful jacket he wears to conventions and he's following people around having affairs?
Hey man, I'm following.
He did solve the Salisbury poisoning though, so
he did. He did.
What a guy!
Do you know what though? I think it gives the lie that Doctor Who was that popular. I don't think it really was that popular. I mean, it was way down the charts for most of its history in the classic.
Yeah, that's true. It was never. It was because I think the thing that I find interesting is that you're absolutely right, because nowadays like we all shit our pants whenever Doctor Who drops out of the top 20, but during the classic era, it was barely ever in.
Yeah, never was in. Yeah,
and there were only 4 channels.
Exactly.
And back in those days, of course, with only 3 channels and with not a lot of telly being made, if you wanted somebody to be in your detective show, then you probably picked somebody you'd seen in a detective show. If you wanted somebody to be in your, kitchen sink drama, you'd probably choose somebody you'd seen in a kitchen sink drama, or thereabouts. If you wanted somebody from Doctor Who, what kind of program were you making? That's why they didn't get cast. Yeah. I mean, apart from Blake 7, that's the only place they all turn up, isn't it?
Yeah.
The thing is, though, we say it wasn't that big, but if you add the ratings if you add the viewing figures for Terminus from the last 30 years, it's actually the most popular TV show ever of the week.
Because it was made to be kept watching and watching and watching.
You just have to keep adding on the viewing figures as they come in.
Yeah.
All the UK gold repeats, all the DVD sales, all the streaming. I'm there.
Top of the charts, baby.
That's how Russell does it, right? Is that, we found a few more viewing figures. We found a few more.
Yeah.
This is from 14 weeks afterwards, but, it still counts. He's just had it on loop in his flat.
But then again, do you know what the print run is of the Blu-ray collection?
About 20,000, something like that?
That's of 2.
Right.
The season 12 print run was 5,000 copies. And when it sold out so quickly, they went up to 10.
Wow.
Right.
So I mean, you talk about repeat viewers, but actually the numbers for those are still fairly small, really.
No.
Yeah, but then like they are a niche product.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like
With-
they're the Doctor Who equivalent of those like massive like Beatles reissues that come with like 12 vinyl
Yeah.
and like demos and all that kind of stuff that you don't really want to listen to different versions of Taxman. You just want to hear I don't know why I picked that Beatles song.
You just want to see all the Beatles on a car journey to a Beatles convention in Dusseldorf or wherever the fuck it was.
It does put into context though when people start talking about disrespecting the old school fans. It's like, yeah, but there's only about 600 of you left.
And then the thing of it is,
in what way? Like,
yeah.
You're very well served. Like, if you look at any other old telly, even Star Trek, do you know what I mean? Like, even Star Trek from like a home video perspective, you're not getting nearly the sort of in-depth extras and things like that. And it's Star Trek, it's like one of the biggest sort of sci-fi shows of all time. And it's just like, oh, here's a couple of documentaries and maybe a commentary.
Right, and this is nerd stuff. So look at something that actually genuinely popular, like say Dad's Army. What's on the Dad's Army is way, way, way more watched than Doctor Who, right? What's on the Dad's Army DVDs?
The episodes.
What? Yeah. What's on the Dad's Army Blu-rays? What Blu-rays?
Yeah.
Right. So
this is the only YouTube broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, where you hear the phrase, "Where's the Dad's Army Blu-rays?"
I
This is the only Doctor Who YouTube stream where we've gone, do you know what? I think Doctor Who fans are actually quite well served. Job done.
Yeah.
And that was 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes after we all, talked about how and when and where we wanked last.
Preserved on the internet, which, they could use as an extra if they wanted to fill out series 3.
If we mention it enough times, they have to, right? It's like Candyman.
Yeah, the season 3 circle jerk is going to be a difficult watch for everybody when they pick up that box set, but someone's got to do it. We've all heard Tom Baker's autobiography or read Tom Baker's autobiography in his Wankers Club, so
The season 3 behind the sofa is the 5 of us diving behind our sofas, just to see what tissues we can find.
I've never heard JR have such a potty mouth.
I know.
Joe was here when I came in, wasn't he? And now that Joe's gone, I need to out Joe, right?
Right. Good luck.
Fraser Gregory, and he's right. They don't even release Deep Space Nine on Blu-ray.
Although, have you seen? I mean, this isn't, it's not Doctor Who related, but have you seen the guy that's remastering Deep Space Nine with laser discs?
Yes,
yes.
On Twitter,
wearing laser disc. Right. It's incredible, like what that kind of results in.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of popular things that aren't, that don't come with extras and whatnot, Inspector Morse made on film. They don't even show it in telly in HD because they threw all the films away after they transferred it to show on the telly. So Inspector Morse, as popular as that is, which kind of basically pisses all over sort of classic Doctor Who in terms of how much it's seen these days, it's forever on ITV4, and they're just showing SD masters on ITV4.
Yeah, but I think it's because a lot of the audience don't care.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's got to be less popular for enough people, enough of a percentage of the audience to care, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if the Doctor Who Blu-rays are what, 10,000, 50 quid a pop, probably for a box set, it probably just makes money back, and it's not a big risk, I guess, for BBC Studios.
Well, and of course they add another 10,000 with the non-limited version, don't they?
Right.
So it probably does go up to 20,000 with that, I suppose.
And if you think flashback 30 years ago, Tomb of the Cybermen got to number 1 in the video charts after being found by, I think, was 25,000. So essentially, over that time, we've lost 5,000 people. There are 20,000 hardcore Doctor Who fans in the world, and that is it.
Of course, that was just on the opening week or month or whatever, wasn't it?
Of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you've got to wonder how many people are buying it after that. Like, can't be many.
What I don't get with the Blu-rays is the people are not buying them. So the people say, "Oh, I don't bother with the Blu-rays," and I'm just thinking, well, you went from the Target novel to the VHS, and then you went from the VHS to the unedited VHS, and then you went from the unedited VHS to the DVD, and then you went from the DVD to the special edition DVD, but you draw the line at the best available version.
Enough is enough sometimes. You've just got to
Yeah.
go, you know, I mean, the best available version is still looks pretty shoddy compared to like
Fair point.
most television
Yeah.
now. I've got a mate who Ben and Mark met called Nigel, who's about 15 years older than us. And he's just like, I'm not bloody buying them again. And he said, I wish there was a market where they just sell me the extras, like one disc or a download of VAM, but I'm just not interested in buying Meglos for the fourth time.
Did they not do that in the gap between deciding they were going to re-release season 12? Like, was there not a thing you could buy the extras on like iTunes or something?
Yeah, but only for season 12.
But they've never done it again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Probably
no, for
couldn't.
season 12, you can buy the you can buy all the extras, but that's the only season you can do it for.
But not on discs, crucially, and that's where we
yes.
drew the line. Because if it wasn't on discs, he wasn't paying the money over, right?
And I do get that because, you know, like digital purchases, you know, they can just go. Either you change your account or the place goes bust
Yeah, Big Finish.
and things are no longer available.
Well, can we, if we're going to get into this, can we talk about the anticipation of the Blu-ray?
The what?
Your viewing figures just went up.
Let's have a solo layout just for that little visitor.
Hey!
What's the name?
Charlie. It's a he.
Nice.
When you get the Blu-ray and you've been anticipating it and really looking forward to it, do you actually watch any of the episodes? And
No.
B, when you go straight to watching the extras, how soon into watching an extra do you go, was this worth it? Was this worth the 50 quid, 60 quid?
I can tell you on the season 20 or 21 or whatever it was about the time they hit Calais for that car journey. I was a bit like, no.
Yeah, it seemed like such a funny idea. I'd seen the trailer, I was like, that's going to be a right laugh. And then in practice, you watch it, it's just like,
yeah.
I still haven't watched the second one of. Because I think there's two, aren't there?
What?
No, there's one where they're in Amsterdam, isn't there? With Mark.
That's it. Yeah, there's one where they're in it, and I was like, I just haven't watched that.
But you know what I think it is, and this may come back to haunt me at some future point in my life. But I think, I don't know. I feel there's a lot of like reverence and full-facedness to a lot of the people kind of producing these extras. And I think, you know, you could absolutely, people like Peter Davison and Janet Fielding, there's definitely latitude to allow them to go a bit further and just have a bit more of a laugh. And I wonder how much there is on the kind of cutting room floor out of some kind of belief of like, oh, well, maybe that's a bit too far. Maybe that's, you know, whatever.
But they're also worried about the people buying them, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, for every group like us, there's a group like, you know, Ian Levine's lot, or, you know, where they'll be like anything vaguely sort of against the show is sacrilege, unless they're doing it, in which case,
yeah,
that's fine.
But also, like their whole thing of like, oh, I can't believe they're spending money on this extra and not spending money on, you know, raising the corpses of William Hartnell and making them dance like fucking skeletons. Like, you know, it's apples and oranges. It's the thing when like people kind of complain about, oh, I can't believe that the council have put all this money into an art gallery and not renovated the high street. I said, well, sir, you've just shown a fundamental lack of how public funding works. There's money for the arts and there's money for, like, you know, regeneration. And what your town has done is they've applied for the arts funding and they've got that arts funding, and hopefully that art gallery will then bring in the opportunity to regenerate the town centre. And it's the same with the extras. Like, that money is not ever going anywhere other than daft little side extra things. You know?
To remove all the flies that were buzzing around Patrick Troughton in that new version of the Five Doctors. That was. Do you know that? Do you know that? You know, there's obviously the bit where Patrick Troughton and Nicholas Courtney are walking, you know, from the unit house. And it was apparently but there was a lot of flies that were out. And if you watch the original version closely, you can see flies flying around. And one of the things on the special edition of the season 20 box set is they just removed all the flies. And it's like, that's really the main difference between the original version of the Five Doctors and the celebrated Blu-ray version.
I just assumed you were saying he was nearly dead.
No. Like, there's like, have a watch, go do your let's all have some homework after this. Like, that's really all. I mean, I appreciate cheeky Five Doctors, but the best thing they ever did with re-releasing the Five Doctors is give a Phil Collins and a David Tennant commentary.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I wish they'd done more things. They could do more things like that. I know I'm sounding like Ian Levine now, but no, I'm not. I'm praising extras. Oh shit!
Well, there's odd people on the behind the sofas, isn't there? Not that I've seen any of them really, but because I mean, as far as I go, I crack the plastic when it comes up for a Who Review Extra review, and that's the disc I'll get out. I'm future-proofing myself by buying them. Are we doing gossip that I really shouldn't say out loud?
Go on,
yes, please. Let's do that.
Yes.
So, well, this is far enough in the past that I don't think it really matters anymore anyway. But talking about the things that you were supposed to spend the money on and the ways that you were supposed to spend the money and, you know, what the money was supposedly intended for. One of the great things that Dan Hall did when he took over the DVD range in the sort of latter days of the DVD range was he said to the BBC, right, these are the 13 titles we plan to release this year. What's our budget? And the BBC said, right, X for that, Y for that, Z for that. And instead of taking X and putting it towards one DVD and Y and putting it towards another DVD, he just took the whole pot of money and said, right, how can we most usefully use this money? And so you'd get some DVDs that would cost a lot less than others, but he was able to divert money into making things that you would never have been able to do on some of the sets if you only used the money that was specifically for that set. For example, and this was the great pity of the 50th anniversary, you know, the animations we got of the moon base, Reign of Terror, those were paid for by the money that was supposed to be going on to making extras for the revisitation sets. But the revisitation sets mostly were made up, or not mostly, but largely, were made up of extras that already existed. So Dan Hall was able to use that money to pay for the animations. And what happened when it got to the 50th anniversary was BBC fucking Studios decided, 50th anniversary, nobody's going to care about Doctor Who after this. So all the revisitations titles that Dan Hall had planned for after the 50th anniversary to pay for the animations for things like the Underwater Menace, BBC said, no, we're not going to give you money for them. And that was it. They knocked the DVD range on the head. And we could have had a special edition of Day of the Daleks and a special edition of Pyramids of Mars. I think somebody told me 4 titles that were going to be the next revisitations, or in 2 of the next revisitation sets. One, Dalek Invasion of Earth was one of them. I think
Horror of Fang Rock was another one.
Horror of Fang Rock.
We did have a Day of the Daleks special edition.
Not Day of the Daleks. I meant Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And so we'd have had great special editions of those, and we'd have had the Underwater Menace animation like 12 years before we finally got it.
Do you hear that? The internet? Do you hear that? Look what we were robbed of. This fucking show. Who the...
And what else we were robbed of was what we actually eventually are going to get, I suspect, is another thing that he had planned. I don't know, planned is maybe too strong a word. He was interested in seeing, because of the stories where the episodes don't exist, he was interested in putting out discs, DVDs of those stories which wouldn't have had the episodes on, would just have had the extras on. But the extras basically would have included the recons. They would have made recons for those stories. But I think the BBC got cold feet at that, because that would have been putting out discs that didn't actually have any technically feature material on them. But you could have got away with it by putting them out in box sets.
I wonder whether there was a Power of the Daleks enhanced CD-ROM release, and I wonder whether that was a test. And it was basically this telestat reconstruction and the audio. And I wonder whether that was a little tester of like, oh, maybe we can't do it as DVDs, but we could sell them as these enhanced.
I remember that, yeah.
I think that was before Dan Hall came aboard, but I think that might have been part of his thinking. The fact that they'd done that was part of his, oh, maybe we could do that on a bigger scale. I don't know how close he ever got to actually seeing this through. But, I don't know how close he ever got to seeing this through, but I suspect that as and when we ever get the Blu-ray collections of like season 6, season 5, season 4, whatever, season 3 especially, we're basically going to finally get what Dan Hall's vision was, with sets which will just have probably recons and extras for some of the stories, right? Because best will in the world, BBC are never going to animate like 12, 13 episodes of Daleks Master Plan, are they?
Well, you say that. It was on the cards very early on when they brought the animations back. Gary Russell said he was going to do that. And actually, I think it was to do with Mark Ayres said, no, the soundtrack's not good enough. And that's how he ended up with Galaxy 4. It's like, what a trade-off.
But we have new soundtracks, don't we, for Master Plan now?
We do now, yeah. But I just don't think we did then.
No.
It's one of those things.
I mean, Daleks Master Plan would sell.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends on what sell means, you know.
Yeah.
And also,
I've always said they should do it in two halves, like the books, so they can sell it twice, make twice as much money. I mean, if you can do Power of the Daleks, right, 6 episodes animated,
yeah,
you can sell 6 animated episodes of Dalek Master Plan twice, right?
I just want to see an animated version trying to make sense of what happens in the Feast of Stephen. I mean, the soundtrack is blistering chaos. I just want to see somebody try somebody's job just to work out what is the action and logistics.
I mean, there is a version out there, Ben.
Adam Bullock's version.
Of course, there is now, isn't there? Yes.
I think Adam Bullock's version has been pulled from YouTube, though, hasn't it? I think he did a version that was basically what's the word for when you do something where it's not realistic, but it's kind of, so he just did it by what's the word for when it's very subjective? You know what I mean? Yeah, it was stylized. It was very subjective though. So he did things like there was a scene where there's some detectives in a car. Instead of having a car with a background on a street or whatever, the car is basically coming out of this great big flash like a bolt of lightning onto the screen and into the picture. Stuff like that. He was doing it very subjectively. And actually, it works really nicely. Probably like the Celestial Toymaker thing in some ways. Because it was just one episode that was mad anyway. So he just went off and did it mad. And then
that is a way of doing it, the way that they did Star Trek, the animated series, is that you either get these massive, like, half-face close-ups of characters. So all you've got animate is like the side of a mouth moving. Yeah. But it gives a bit of gravitas. Or you do like really far away where everyone's like in kind of shadowed silhouette and it's just the same dialogue over the top. You could absolutely do that.
What about if we did it, but every character is just Ian Levine's face? I'm sold. £20.
12 episodes of the Dallas Master Plan.
Hey, over on his Facebook group, everyone who's seen it says it's really good. So, you know, maybe we're the ones missing out. Why not?
You're not.
I'm not watching that. The closest reconstruction that I loved was the University of Central Lancaster.
The kids, the students.
Yeah, the kids doing it. I thought that was amazing. That was brilliant.
Yeah, that was really good.
Apparently, there is a version on Dailymotion which syncs up the UC Land stuff to the original soundtrack.
Because Doctor Who fans are never happy.
And then Ian's redoing it. Like,
He's redone it.
Why?
But the animation for Mission to the Unknown.
Yeah, so he's
Well,
already
he's done it in the style
done
of his AI slop. And he,
Right. David Bush's animation of that was pretty good, really.
it's
I mean,
really,
it was
really
good,
good.
yeah.
And I don't know how much Ian paid for that, but obviously he'd already got that. But now he's decided that this trumps everything that he's ever done.
I know it makes me unfashionable, but I'm on board with Ian's AI stuff. Now, with caveats, with qualifications.
JR, that's not what makes you unfashionable. Sorry, go ahead.
I was only going to say, they are not something that you could put out in a commercial sense, and they are not in any way, shape, or form like watching an animation that feels like a professional way of telling the story. But in terms of them being a reconstruction, I think it's as close as you can get. Just have that on in front of you and use your imagination to see what the episode would have been. So I think, Ian actually emailed me when one of the early ones came out and said, have you seen that I'm doing these? And I said to him, yeah, and actually I could happily watch these because I could, in my head, I could go to that place where I'm using these, like you did with the old recons, to try and imagine the episodes. But I said to him, but you could never sell these. You could never put these out on a disc because it's not that kind of material. It's not like feature professional material that people would pay money for. It's a lovely thing to do for the people who do like those, but it's not something that you could persuade other people to partake of. It's taste things.
And that's my issue with it. I would not have an issue with Ian Levine pumping his money into AI reconstructions of missing Doctor Who episodes if it was what it is, which is him, a hobbyist who has a large amount of disposable income, just funding these kind of like little experiments to kind of show how the technology works, to as he keeps saying in these sort of like feverish emails to like the BBC about a YouTube algorithm, he just wants to recreate the missing episodes before he dies. Fine.
Yeah.
Great. If that's all it is for him, I have no issue with that. But the problem is he's sort of talking about these as if he's the second coming of Christ, and that he's handing down these great gifts to fandom, and and if it wasn't for Ian, we would all forget about Galaxy 4, and it's like it's just not. He's setting himself up to fail by hyping these things up to high heaven. If he literally just said, "Look, this is a fun experiment. Let me know what you think."
There's so on YouTube, there's an interesting channel, a Canadian guy or an American guy. It's called From the Archive. I'll see if I can share the link. But it's a YouTube channel about a guy going through some of the most interesting Doctor Who VHS releases. He's a big VHS fan. Looking at his Ice Warriors VHS, there's a really interesting, all the videos are about an hour. There's a really interesting kind of history of how the BBC or how people have gone about cleaning up telesnaps, and how people have, since the discovery of audio of missing episodes, have started to marry up telesnaps and audio. And so in a way, what's happening with Ian Levine is he's just another one of these pioneers of working out a new way of utilizing some sort of new technology to bring us a step closer to having those lost episodes back. Issuing death threats along the way maybe slightly derails the cause, haranguing people for money. But look, I mean, I'm with JR, is that I am very much I am interested and intrigued. But going back to From the Archive, do check out the videos because they are very nostalgia filled, but also incredibly instructive. And because he's from the other side, so I was looking at the Silver Nemesis VHS, and he's talking to the guy who made the making of Doctor Who
Eric
video.
Loskin.
Yes, Eric Luskin. He's chatting to Eric Luskin about, because he didn't just make the making of Doctor Who when it was broadcast in America. There was all these kind of, extra wee bonus interviews with John Pertwee and Colin Baker and all that kind of stuff that Eric Luskin made for broadcast on these various channels.
Most of them I was just going to say, most of those are available from Real Time Pictures, all the other documentaries he did, including like loads of interviews with Patrick Troughton.
Yeah.
Oh, is that Troughton in America?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Can I just jump back to Ian Levine's recons?
Yes.
For a second.
Although, sorry, just for a little second, just because he's commented a few times and we haven't said anything yet. We haven't said hello to Bill Barclay. Remember, David Burton was nearly Doctor Who. We do, Bill. And after this, we've got some information for you on that. So,
the thing about Ian's recons, forget all the that looks funny, that looks weird, and forget the culture that's surrounding it of death threats and really angry people on both sides. I don't think anybody making anybody making them, and I include Ian Levine with this, has any respect for the source material, because these things are not put together using the language of 1960s television. Like, it does not look like a 1960s bit of TV. I'm not saying it has to be perfect and bang on, but it's like you must look at these things and go, this isn't quite right. There's so many brilliant YouTube videos out there where people go through camera scripts. David Gillespie Pratt has a channel going through, like, what did this scene look like? The camera scripts exist, that exists. And you can't, like, if you care that much, like, that's the level of detail you need to be putting in. Gav Rymil, I know, I think on his Patreon and a few other things, he's working on some very small AI animated clips, and he's doing just that. And it's like, he hasn't animated 16 episodes or whatever it is. He's probably done about 30 seconds, but it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that of his like 8 animators, however many it is now, there's only one who has any knowledge of Doctor Who. The rest of them are AI guys overseas. I know there's some in Bangladesh. I think there's at least one in Russia. So yeah, you're right. They're not, and obviously he gives them his feedback, which I imagine is more along the lines of "No, do it better."
No, his feedback is, "I don't care if your country is crumbling into war and martial law.
God.
I want the Space Pirates episode 5 pronto."
I mean, the thing is, objectively, there are some things they do well or okay. The lip syncing is generally pretty decent. It does kind of stay consistent throughout. And yeah, sometimes more recently, they've not used as much of the upscaling thing, which has made everyone look so terrible. Although because there's eight different people not talking to each other, there's no consistency in like improvements and things. So you'll get a couple that actually look all right, and then you'll get another one which is upscaled to buggery. And
I like the upscale of Hartnell where they made him look like a hot older woman.
But the thing that kind of struck me recently is it's so, because I compared his Mission to the Unknown to the UCLA one, and it's just so boring. Like everything is, essentially cutting between close up of Mark, close up of Ben, close up of Mark, close up of Ben. There's no room for any kind of art there. You can't sort of switch to a 2-shot or whatever where they're still talking and and as they try and get more ambitious, the worse it looks. When they're trying to animate various scenes, I mean, yeah, the running, anytime they have someone running, it's the same Benny Hill style model.
I mean, you're really sounding like a worm and a parasite there.
I'm a venomous cockroach. But yeah, I mean, when you've got 2 people having a scene together and they're not required to really do much in the way of emoting, it's and that covers probably quite a lot of Doctor Who. Too much of classic Doctor Who, really. But when you've got that, yeah, it's really quite convincing at times. but then they'll get angry or laughing, and their expression stays the same as they're shouting, "Why are you leaving the ship?" And you, yeah. It's
Going
but
back to
the
the
thing is,
camera
if
thing. Sorry.
I was just going to say one last thing. People keep saying on Gallifrey, "Oh, if it was Josh Snares doing this, you wouldn't be blah blah blah." It's like, yeah, but you can't really separate the two. The fact that Ian is hailing himself as the Messiah, the fact you've got people like Paul Ebbs and a couple of other guys, writing these long, torturous missives, about how. Well, there we are. About how great it is, about how great every new one that comes out is perfect, and then Ian spots flaws and goes and redoes it, and it's even more perfect. It's like, it's gaslighting. It feels like gaslighting.
The trouble is, in order to save time and money, they've started with the recons that already existed from loose cannon, and they're basically just animating those. But what they really needed to do in order to make this a sort of fully thoroughgoing project was just to go back to the original sources and start with their own photographs and start with their own sets and create characters to move around inside the sets and so on. But instead, it's kind of like animating over the top of something that already exists. And that saves time and money.
I'd be very interested to see what this could do if applied properly to a brand new production, and having people who can actually animate and stuff fill in the gaps where there's action. I think this could happily be used to make a really good hybrid recon. With some animation in there, some other bit. Kind of. And Gav Rymel's kind of doing that. He's doing a lot of experimenting, mixing different techniques, and I think if there's a future for this kind of AI reconstruction thing, that's where it is. You've got to combine things.
Yeah,
this is the future.
Dylan's point about the camera scripts is that Ian, I've heard him say a number of times. I think most recently on Type 40. Oh, sorry, I threw up a bit.
You're right, that character from the Fast Show.
But just has some bile in his throat.
He said he doesn't.
I know not this Type 40 of which you speak. Could you please explain it to me?
But Ian says in that most recent interview he did with Dan Hadley was that he has these scrapbooks that he filled in as a child watching Doctor Who in the 60s. And he wrote down everything that happened, and he novelized all these Doctor Who scripts. And they're more accurate than camera scripts because they're based on what he saw on the television. He saw the finished product. You can't go back to a camera script because what if something changed? Now, I would say to Ian, that's a perfectly valid point. You're absolutely right. Actors do improvise. Things change. But also, the human memory is not that fucking reliable either.
Plus, if you're writing it down, you're not actually looking at the screen.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of it was written after the episodes had been on, and he also said at one point. He also said at one point when he fell out of love with Doctor Who in the Troughton, sort of late Troughton era, that he threw a lot of his books away, and then a few years later had to recreate them from his memory of the books.
I mean, we're saying he's not the Messiah, but this pretty much is how the Bible was written over a course of 500 years. So,
wasn't it Richard Bignell said, I think it was either Richard Bignell or David J. Howe who have seen these transcripts because they did the rounds in early fandom because they were an invaluable resource. And they said, well, that would be fine, Ian, if we hadn't found some of those episodes since, and your descriptions of them are nothing like what's in the actual episodes. And also, Ian, I mean, from my point of view, it's a little bit like, okay, so your memory's perfect. I don't remember Vicky ever being played by a little Japanese boy, but for some reason, that's how she looks in a lot of your recons, mate.
And of course, there's the drone shots in Highlanders Part 1 and the big army.
What was it? Mark Harrison said that there's a shot of William Hartnell with a massive chin. He calls him Chad Hartnell.
Oh God.
Anyway,
It's the
can I
bit
just say that in terms of
Yeah.
viewers, the moment we started talking about Ian Levine, we shot up at least 7 people. So,
Anywhere, there's just like straight in.
Is he in here? Is he...
Probably.
So
There's
going back
probably
to
been an alert.
going back to Bill Barclay there. Remember David Burton was nearly Doctor Who. Our friend, I don't know if you know this, our friend Mikey Smith has an exclusive interview with David Burton on his podcast, Who and Me. So if that's a little corner of Doctor Who fandom that you're intrigued to find out more about Bill, I'm presuming you're not Bill Barclay, who was the go-to.
Is it Mikey and Who, isn't it?
Mikey and Who, yeah. But I'm presuming this is not Bill Barclay who was. What did I call it? Sorry.
Who and Me.
Who and Me. Sorry. Okay.
He changed the name of it so many times. It's
Who and Me?
True.
Barry Letts' autobiography, though. So it's very different.
So it's, yeah. But on David Burton, the funny thing about the David Burton thing is that he is currently, I think he's got a small role in it, but he's in the Thursday Murder Club movie.
Yeah.
With David Tennant. So there's 2 doctors in that.
There's not, and I'm actually going to leave. Now,
Hang on, David Tennant plays 2 doctors.
Oh,
At
yeah.
this point, yeah.
Doctors in that.
I mean, I'm still going to leave, but I'm happy with that now. There's 2 doctors.
You're saved.
But I've enjoyed this, and I'll probably have the last bit on while I'm seeing to this mental cat behind me. So.
Okay.
Nice one, Pete. Thank you very much. We're going to do this every month.
Cool.
We would love to see you back.
Let's see you soon, JR.
Safe home, mate.
To the rest of you in about half an hour in the WhatsApp. So.
Yeah.
Why am I not in the
See you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Good question.
Oh, he fucking drops that bombshell before he goes, doesn't he?
We're in a WhatsApp with you, JR. This is just
we're on about
WhatsApps.
Actually, that's true. What am I talking about?
Now there are 4.
No, there are
Oh, we
4.
did. I was going to say,
This
are we
is-
carrying on with gossip and bitching?
Yeah, well, so we still do it till about
WhatsApp.
10. But then, like when we would go to the Doctor Who group, when we get to kind of 10 o'clock, do we decide to go on dancing on a Monday night?
I've got a bell that was going to ring. I don't have a bell.
Elsewhere.
I've got a curfew at 9 because I've got a small person who's going to bed.
It's 9:20. Come on, give us some more gossip, JR.
Yeah, come on.
Oh shit! I don't know any more gossip. I mean, no more gossip that I can. I certainly can't talk about stuff on here, can I?
Anyone who says they've no gossip, in their mind's eye, they're exactly thinking about the gossip that they're not allowed to talk about. So that gossip, let's hear that.
No. You've got the red button on. I've got the red button on. Whenever the red button's gone on, my brain absolutely goes to mush. So I will only think of things if you mention somebody or something, and I suddenly go, I know something about that. So, but I can't just conjure gossip.
Philip Morris, go.
No, I can't do that.
Come on, let's do the Morris chat.
No, I can't do it on air. I certainly can't do that on air.
Let's not be dancing around the Morris chat. Let's not be Morris dancers. Oh.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Sorry, going back to like just local group stuff. Talking about missing episodes. We've all probably got people in our lives as part of our extended Doctor Who network who guaranteed us at some point that they know a guy within the BBC that said like something was coming back, which a decade later has not come back. What's everyone's favorite missing episode rumor that they've heard from like the guy down the pub?
The Smugglers was up until quite recently. Like there was a lot of talk that that the Smugglers was coming back, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, it's not.
They only did that to piss me off because the Smugglers is the one I most want to see.
I'm a big Smugglers guy as well.
Is it true that somebody genuinely owns the first episode of Evil of the Daleks and has told the BBC they can only have it if they give him £1 million?
I heard that rumor a couple of years ago when Stephen Moffat was producer, and it wasn't £1 million. It was get rid of Stephen Moffat as showrunner, and they would just
that
run
was
the
a-
episode.
Not Philip Morris.
That was a
wasn't it?
Philip Morris thing that was going around, wasn't it?
And
Oh,
then
was it? Oh,
they gave the job to Chris Chibnall, and it was like, you need to give it to him too.
Yeah. I think the thing about Phil Morris is he'll never be happy.
No.
Full stop. So, I mean, they could make these stories up until the cows come home.
Could
Shall I tell you a theory?
Could we arrange for him to be assassinated, and then we can just retrieve all of the basically what I'm saying is there like a Doctor Who fan like wet work team that we can just dispatch to his house?
Where are Ian Levine's boys?
They could just like sort of reel all the film cans out. Fuck off.
You've just got to hope that his company goes bankrupt and the cans become the property of the people that go into liquidation, and then
because they're notoriously very respectful film history.
Couple of bailiffs with Mission to the Unknown under their arms go, what's this? It's a load of old shit.
Well, we are living in a world where they, after it being missing for about 30 years, they finally found the filming model of the USS Enterprise from the original Star Trek, and it was just in a lockup auction, and they got it back. So the original like kind of 8-foot filming model, the original kind of filming model that they had, just turned up in a guy's lockup, and they found it after it being missing for. There's gonna be one of those. There's gonna be one of those kind of almighty unearthing of can mountains, and we're going to go far. We got the smugglers.
Had that. It was Enemy of the World and Web of Fear. That was our Enterprise moment, wasn't it?
I suppose it was.
Yes. Well, yes, it was. Yeah.
I don't know if you're all aware of the work that Film is Fabulous is doing at the moment, where they're basically trying to encourage collectors to. It's not necessarily hand over what they've got. It's not a missing episodes hunt, but the film collectors, a lot of them died during COVID, and many collections went into the skip because families didn't know what to do with them. And they're encouraging them to hand them over to be digitized, for instance, and then handed back, and also to make lists of what they got and to leave instructions when they die of what's to happen to these things, because that is
it's really interesting because my gran doesn't my gran doesn't have all Doctor Who episodes. But my gran passed away. Her funeral was like, I think, 3 weeks before lockdown. And we're still kind of dealing to sort of sell the contents of the house, and that would be sort of divvied up between the family. And it was hard enough to get, like during COVID, and then even after COVID, to just get people like specialists from like auction houses to just come to the house and deal with like jewelry and things like that. So I can well imagine film collectors dying during COVID. You've got all these film cans, and families kind of just going, I don't know what to do with this. Nobody's doing home visits because there's a pandemic on. Like, I can't just keep these things indefinitely. So of course they kind of end up in the skip. I think what film Film is Fabulous?
Film is Fabulous.
I think that's a really great thing to kind of raise awareness of kind of the importance of these things so that people do. Because the other thing you learn when your grandparents die and you're kind of having to deal with the estate is that there are members of your family who are like, oh, that'll be worth something. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. But if you implant that idea in people's head that film cans could be important, people are definitely going to be keeping those things aside.
But I did wonder. So going back to that smugglers thing, it was one that it was a rumor I heard again and again over the years, and then there was a point on Twitter it picked up some traction a few years ago, and somebody said, if it's going to be recovered, it's going to be recovered by this date, or it's not going to be recovered. So I wonder, and I don't know this at all, this is pure speculation, whether that is one of those situations where somebody's known to have the smugglers, for instance, or an episode of the smugglers. They die, and there's a bunch of people that know that is of value, not valuable, but of value. And the family's like, No, it's just a load of shit. We're just going to bin it, and maybe there's a bunch of rabid Doctor Who fans knocking on the door, going, "Give us the smugglers to a grieving family." And you could well imagine a situation where, like, almost the family double down and go, "No, fuck off," and like, we're getting rid of it. It's a load of old crap.
My favorite missing episode rumor was it wasn't long after Web of Fear and then Enemy of the World came back. And it was that we've got all 7 episodes of Marco Polo. That's coming next. But what happened was they forgot to pay Fraser Hines and all these actors who were in those missing episodes, like their fee or their repeat fee, basically. So until they iron all that out, we're not going to get Marco Polo. We still don't have Marco Polo, so that was clearly bollocks.
Now, do you know there's an interesting story about Marco Polo? Because the rumor was always it's going to be Webb, Enemy, and Marco, and then Marco was apparently taken off the table. Whether you believe that or not, I don't know. But there is a rumor that Philip Morris, somebody from the restoration team, had found in Australia part or all of Marco Polo, and Philip Morris went, "Well, you don't need to deal with that. I've got this sorted." And then that opportunity disappeared, and obviously Philip Morris never returned Marco Polo. JR was shaking his head there.
I don't believe a word of all these things. These are the kind of these are the kind of stories that just go round and round in circles. Somebody, so many times during the whole missing episodes Omni rumor thing, you heard people saying, "What if?" And then sort of like 15 days later, you had it from 15 sources that it was true. No, the 15 sources had just had somebody repeat the "what if" to them, and it just went around and around in circles till the "what if."
I'll give you a very good example of that, and I may have told you guys this before, but for the people listening at home, when Web and Enemy were returned, one of my housemates at the time was writing news for Yahoo about missing episodes, and we were down the pub, and I was telling him all about it, and he was like, "I'm going to write about these Doctor Who missing episodes," and I said, "Oh, and the rumours are that that they found this, and this." And that was repeated as an insider says that these episodes are coming back. Like, this was way after, like, the Omni rumor had done its business, so I don't feel like I fanned any flames. But it's just I was that insider, and I was just his mate that he lived with.
Well, I had an email back in the very early days of the Omni rumor when I first found out about it. I had an email from somebody who was somebody who'd been working on a book about somebody who worked on Doctor Who back in the 70s. So it was somebody who would be in a position to know people who would be in a position to know. And he told me the exact names of all 90 of the episodes that had been returned to the BBC. Well, clearly that was a load of shit as well. Do you know what I mean? He had an exact list. How the hell did he come up with an exact list? Who gave him an exact list of something that was bullshit?
The list was doing the rounds, and what, like it said on it, didn't it? 11 and 12 of the Daleks' master plan are stuck together. That was all one of the things that always stuck out.
Because what? No, I'm not going to go there.
There was supposed to be a book about the Omni rumor that somebody was writing, and it was announced. And from what I understand from the publisher,
I'm in it.
Are you in it?
Yes, I'm in it.
Philip Morris threatened him with legal action about revealing too much. So what that could mean, he's got loads of stuff, he's got nothing, or they just went, he's a bit of a twat.
Dave Hoskin.
I think probably the latter.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a rumor that Tomb of the Cybermen was nearly blocked because Shirley Cooklan wouldn't allow the rights for her image to be used again for the VHS sales?
I don't know. That doesn't sound
I'd heard
right.
that.
Did her relative Ian Levine convince her to go along with it? Is it just another story where Ian is the hero of? Because he's related to her, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
Because
that's probably where to start.
There was a point that people could do that, but quickly into the home media market, there was an agreement reached with Equity that they didn't need to clear because otherwise it would just make everything an absolute minefield.
Yeah.
They managed to come to an agreement. So I don't know whether in '92 they would have still been doing that, but
I don't think so. They'd have sorted that out long before then, surely, wouldn't they? You'd think.
Smugglers is interesting though, because I'm not going to name names, but in the Edinburgh local group, there was a guy genuinely trustworthy on everything else, and actually very well connected with a lot of the old school fans, a lot of people who were producing the DVDs at the time. Swore not just that he knew that the Smugglers was about, but that he'd seen one of the episodes. He'd been round to a guy's house and watched an episode of the Smugglers. You know, it was very hush hush, wink wink about the whole thing, but like, oh, you know, you seem for everything else immensely trustworthy and a good guy, so I'm going to believe you when you say this.
But it's weird because you hear first-hand tales, and I've had this put to me so many times. First-hand tales of people who apparently went to a party where everybody who was working on the DVD collection, plus other people, notable people too, including people who'd written for the television series, somebody who'd been in the television series, and so on and so forth, all went to a party where they watched all 6 episodes of Power of the Daleks.
Yeah, I remember that rumor doing
15 years ago. 15 years ago. And we've still not seen a single second of this. It didn't happen, did it?
Yeah, especially as the same group of people decided to animate Power of the Daleks shortly afterwards. I often wonder whether the Smugglers rumors came from fan copies of that like cine film of the location footage, and whether there were copies of that doing the round, and someone, I've got the Smugglers, I'll show you a little bit, but people big up their status, and then they're like, oh, actually, I saw the whole of episode 1, and actually they'd seen a few little clips that, you know, on a 8th generation VHS might have looked like he'd got clips of the Smugglers, but actually it was just some location footage.
I remember everyone. Oh, go on.
No, sorry, JR, after you.
Well, I was only going to say, I remember once I saw on YouTube a clip from Power of the Daleks of one of the Daleks being attacked and kind of basically melting, sort of thing. And I thought, well, is that something that exists from? No, it was something that Paul Vanezis had done as part of a project just to recreate this one single shot from Power of the Daleks, and he put the result up on YouTube. But if you saw it without any explanation, you'd think you were seeing something out of Power of the Daleks, right?
Yeah. It's that last shot, isn't it, of the Dalek
sort of crumbling,
and they used it in like one of the DVD documentaries. But that sparked the rumor that that frame's missing, that scene's missing from the recovered episode 6, so they've had to restage it.
Oh, such nonsense! Do you want to know my rumor then about episode? Yeah, well, do you want to know my theory about what happened to episode 3 of the Web of Fear?
Absolutely, this is it. The last half an hour, and we're getting the juicy stuff.
I don't think so. So everything I'm about to say is completely hypothetical, right? So the Web of Fear and Enemy of the World turned up in Nigeria, which was the country where the kidnapping of Philip Morris had taken place back in, was it 2006? No, it was earlier than that, wasn't it? Whenever the kidnapping was, that was where it had taken place, right?
So Philip Morris, with that sentence.
Philip Morris would not have wanted to go back to Nigeria, right? So clearly, the first person into that room in that film thing where these cans were in Nigeria was not Philip Morris. So what happens is somebody who works for Phil Morris, some African guy who's sort of like feet on the ground for him, has gone to this film place, has seen these cans, rings up Phil Morris and says, there is a couple of Doctor Who stories here. And Phil Morris says, what stories are they? The Enemy of the World and the Web of Fear. How many episodes? All of them. All of them. And Phil Morris says, all 12 episodes of The Enemy of the World and Web of Fear, and rings the BBC up and says, all 12 episodes of The Enemy of the World and Web of Fear. And then Phil Morris has to go to Nigeria, has to swallow his pride and go back to the country where he was kidnapped. And when he gets there, turns out it's only 11 of them. And if you ask me, that's what happened to that 3rd episode of Web of Fear. It was never there in the first place. Somebody just misspoke and said all the episodes are here, and it turned out they weren't.
Multiple people who are sort of in theory in the know have said they question whether it was ever there in the first place. But
100%. So there you go. That's my theory. It's based on completely hypothetical situations.
Because I think the whole if the Web of Fear Part 3 didn't feature the Doctor and the Brigadier's first meeting, everybody would just think the rational thing that JR's just put forward, that, well, there was never really there in the first place. But because it's got this kind of like this meaning and importance to sort of the history of Doctor Who, the story becomes somebody half-inched it, and it's still out there. And it's like, well, it's probably not. It's probably just like...
Well, it's not the story becomes. Didn't Philip Morris say someone stole it?
Yes, he said
Oh, yeah.
who has it, but
It's just like Ian Levine. He just puffs
He's
himself
saving
up.
face, isn't he?
He's just, you know...
He
Yeah,
saves
and that's
face by
what-
making a story up or something, whatever.
Sure, but you don't have to save face. You still gave us like a complete story and the majority of another story back. That's still fucking excellent work.
Plus, the thing is, if those other 11 episodes were there, probably Web of Fear episode 3 still exists too. It's probably just somewhere else. You know,
Yeah.
it probably would.
did anybody look in the room next door?
Or the shelf above or the shelf below, or like down the back of the shelves.
Philip's watching now and he's gone, oh, for fuck's sake, why didn't I think of that?
But do you know what I mean? It probably got put in a crate with some other episodes of some other program that were
Yeah.
getting moved on somewhere else, and it accidentally ended up in a crate, and so it's moved on to Timbuktu or wherever.
Are there not also stories of like sort of film cans holding reels of film that aren't what it says on the tin?
All the
Yeah,
time.
Like, have we ever thought about this? Have we ever thought that actually maybe at one point all of the Doctor Who episodes were in existence, but because it didn't say Doctor Who on the can, they just said, no, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. This is why
I
and it's-
periodically check my Blake 7 DVDs just to make sure that the Smugglers isn't hiding away in there somewhere.
I know we all know about it, but the website Broad DW Cast, where they do so much great work to write essays and general kind of great academia about how BBC films were sold around the world and where missing episodes could be. For what sounds like it might be quite dry, there's some great essays on that website. For instance, was that one of the Dalek master plans was found in a Mormon hall somewhere, and there's a great essay, a really quite interesting essay where they talk about it wasn't a Mormon hall, it wasn't a hall, this is where it would be, and they go into like proper in-depth investigative journalism as to where this episode, how this episode might have been returned. I love it as a website. It's a wonderful resource.
It's amazing. The thing that annoys me and lots of other people about the Philip Morris situation is it's fine if he hasn't found anything else and if he's got all these opinions on you. It's the fact that he hasn't said A, that's it, or B, he promised he'd tell the full story of his search, and like it's important for people who are interested in missing episodes and potentially recovering them to know what areas and how he's covered it and how he's come to certain conclusions and gone, well, this is where Marco Polo ended up before it was put in a bin. It's like much like broadcast DW do and the White Books do of just establishing sort of the narrative of the life of these film cans. And I just think it's really peculiar that he hasn't. I think for a lot of people, there's that false hope that actually he's still searching and he's going to deliver the 97 episodes. But for me, it's not that. It's more he could offer a lot of closure, I think, on the life of missing episodes and when and how they were disposed and why we can go, well, we don't need to think about those ones anymore.
Who are the lads that do the Missing Episodes podcast? That's
Tim.
a great listen.
It's amazing. They do. Like if you're a Patreon of theirs, they do like extended episodes and online chats. And Tim is so knowledgeable. I don't know Tim from Adam, but he is so knowledgeable. And the people he gets on know so much about these things. It's just a great listen. If you're a nerd that likes missing episodes, it's well worth a listen.
I used to know Tim.
Anything you like?
Oh,
to share?
that sounds touchy. That sounds like there's a story there.
I used to be very unpopular in the missing episode Omni rumor circles, didn't I? Because of some of the things I said.
Oh yeah,
common sense things that people didn't want to hear, and many of those guys had falling outs with me over stuff that, like 6 months later, they'd be repeating themselves, but they just didn't want to hear it at the time.
I don't think anybody wanted to hear it at the time. There was such a buzz of going around that this really could be we've all won the lottery. That I want to believe was very much the mantra.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Bob Monkhouse died? And everybody thought there was going to be an absolute, because he was a habitual recorder of everything. And we thought we were going to get all Doctor Who back.
Yeah, he was one of the first guys to buy a video recorder in the UK, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was obsessive about recording television, BBC, ITV. He had some stuff, which the archives didn't retain anymore, and film cans as well.
Yeah.
Everyone thought, oh, fuck. Bob Monkhouse is dead. We're going to get everything. We're going to get the Savages back. It's going to be great.
Yeah, he's mad, isn't Doctor Who, wasn't he, Bob Monkhouse?
We've got nothing.
On the other hand, Stanley Kubrick obviously was meant to have based parts of his special effects from 2001: A Space Odyssey on things we'd seen in the Dalek Master Plan and stuff.
The story goes, because it's not Kubrick that phones up, is it? It's somebody on Kubrick's team that phones up the BBC. So I do wonder if he ever actually saw it, or if it was just one of his kind of effects guys.
And well, he was recording. He was recording stuff off the telly in the 60s. I've spoken to his brother-in-law, and they've been through the archives, and there's nothing there at the BBC.
Wow. Did he mention anything? Did Kubrick mention anything in his last interview to Adrian Rogelsford?
Did you ever hear so going back to the missing episodes? So at one point, the missing episodes thing got so mad. This conspiracy theory went around that eventually somebody brought to my attention that somebody had scrupulously researched. And they said the entire missing episodes thing had been created by me, who had got my friends Paul Vanessis and Mark Gatiss and Phil Morris and all these other people to collude on this thing to deceive a fan. None of these people I actually knew before the missing episodes Omni Rumor, by the way. I had no idea who Paul Vanessis was before the Omni Rumor. But yeah, so
you started it.
No, this guy in Australia put this great big fact, I think in Australia, put together this great big fact sheet showing how I had controlled the whole thing and invented the whole thing and got certain people. I got certain people to say got certain people to say certain things at certain times to deceive the whole of fandom. And I tell you, the funniest thing,
what like beyond deception? Was it just deception?
God knows. It was
because
absolutely ridiculous.
I can see a world in which somebody creates the Omni Rumor as a kind of way to tip people's hands, to kind of be like, oh, they're all out there, in the vain hope that somebody go either no, they're fucking not, or well, maybe I've got this, I've got that. Obviously, it didn't work.
The same approach that Operation U-Tree did by releasing names of people to see if anything else would come out about certain celebrity individuals.
Exactly.
Because the truth is probably just, going back to what I was saying about this guy who sent me this email with the names of 90 episodes in, the truth is probably that, isn't it? If we went, so I'm not going to say who, but me and somebody else actually during the Omni Rumor, instead of going online on the forums and just sort of joining in the speculation, we actually sort of started trying to research it, and we started trying to work out, well, who said what when, and how can that relate to what somebody said before and what somebody said afterwards. And we came to the conclusion that I think the most likely list of episodes was a list of 40 that had been published in something like March of 2012, way before the rest of the rumors, and that seemed to have provenance in something that somebody who worked on the television program had said at a particular time at a particular event to a particular person. And so we kind of tried to work it out that way, but even then none of that came true either. So as factual as we could get in the research into where the rumor had come from, it just turned out to be people were repeating things to each other that had started off speculatively rather than as repetition of actual things.
One of the most sort of famous smoking guns in the whole situation was two members of DWM in a bar somewhere after being at a screening or something, and they're having a chat, and there's the Omni Rumor thing, and they go, and someone overhears them one go, they found all 97 of the missing episodes, and they take it as Doctor Who magazine employee confirms it when they were actually asking the question, what? Really? There's a rumor that they found 97 missing episodes of Doctor Who.
And there was another one, which was Tom Spilsbury had commissioned a cover saying Marco Polo recovered. And the reason Tom Spilsbury commissioned, so it turned out, I can't remember exactly the ins and outs of it, and I might be getting the story wrong or whatever. Maybe it was Enemy of the World. But the reason, so it turned out that Tom Spilsbury had commissioned a cover along the lines of what the rumor was. But the reason he'd commissioned a cover along the lines of what the rumor was because he'd heard the rumor. And so he wanted to make sure he was prepared just in case it turned out to be true.
Well, whenever there's whenever there's an election, they always prepare to covers for the newspapers going, oh my God, Labour stormed to victory, Conservatives make surprise win, or vice versa.
Yeah, but do you remember there was a Doctor Who magazine cover with Mark Eden on the front because they'd found the telly snaps for Marco Polo. Like maybe was it 1-2 years before?
Boris Hussein had them. Most of the episodes that he didn't direct, because there's like 1 or 2 episodes he doesn't direct.
Episode 4.
Which begs the question then, what rumor are we starting on this very broadcast right now that we can trace back here that the people who are watching can help us transmit around?
Have we just done about half a dozen?
Russell T. Davis has episode 3 of The Massacre, and he just uses it to cut coke on and do lines. He actually cuts off bits of the film to cut the lines and then picks his teeth with it, bins it.
I was told, so this is not rumor, this is something that I was told by people in positions of power, that when...
That is also how rumors work.
Oh no, but this is this is a discounting of rumor.
Right.
So I was told that when Phil Morris gave over the 11 episodes that he gave, the 9 that didn't exist and the 2 that did, he was taken into so the BBC were interested in what else and if they were going to pay any money towards or whatever. So he was taken into a room with some BBC lawyers, and the BBC lawyers were not Doctor Who fans and they weren't television professionals. They were just lawyers. So they were just lawyers who were on retainer for the BBC. And these lawyers were told to find out if Phil Morris had any other episodes of Doctor Who or was likely to get any. And they spent something like the entire day in this room with Phil Morris asking every question that could lead to anywhere.
Did he wire him up to a car battery? And
But these lawyers walked out of the room at the end of the day and said he has not nor will have any other episodes of Doctor Who than the 11 he's handed over to you guys.
Wow.
And that was it. And I've probably told this story off the air, but of course the reason why I became associated at all with the Omni Rumor in the first place was because I was the first person who did any significant kind of interview with Phil Morris, because I did that one for Starburst magazine, which was about 40 minutes, I think, or something. So what happened was I emailed Phil Morris at some point and said, I work for Starburst magazine, would you like to do an interview with us? And he said yes. And I said when? He said, oh, I'm not sure, we'll set it up at some point. And then randomly out of the blue, like weeks after this, I get an email from BBC Studios or Worldwide. Was it Studios? Yeah, anyway, whatever. BBC Studios. And they said, oh, Phil Morris is going to be at the XL on the Sunday, the day after the sort of the 50th anniversary, the 23rd of November, 2013. Why don't you come along to the XL and do the interview there? And I'm like, how the fuck did the BBC know I was supposed to be interviewing Phil Morris? Why is it them who are writing to me? But anyway, of course I went along, sat down with Phil Morris for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and a lovely bloke that he was. And he was quite open, but he didn't say anything. But he was open, relatively speaking. And at the end of it all, the guy from BBC Worldwide came up to me and said, so, did he tell you anything? And I said, no, don't worry, he didn't. And the guy from BBC Worldwide just basically shrugs and says, fuck me, we're never going to find out, are we? He was hoping I would get it out of Phil Morris to tell them.
You failed us all, JR.
You were the equivalent of like a box balanced on a stick with a little pull string and some breadcrumbs hidden underneath.
I mean, he's insane.
Phil Morris did very heavily. Well, here is Phil Morris did very heavily hint to me that there were going to be.
There's the
William
rumor.
Hart-
There's the rumor right there. Philip Morris is doing an AI version of an NFL child, so it can go on iPlayer. There's your rumor.
Nice one.
Thanks, Fraser.
Nice
Yes,
one.
it is.
As if Phil Morris would work with the BBC.
Well, didn't he say he'd rather burn than return? No.
Something like that.
What a guy.
Just
Yeah,
the levels of Trumpian rhetoric in Doctor Who fandom these days. You know, I'd rather burn than return. You know, Ian Levine's kind of sort of cult of sycophants. When did we become this? When did we go from sitting in pubs chatting about Doctor Who to this kind of odd messiah complex that some people have?
Well, the whole
Jeremy Bentham.
Yeah, the whole
Wasn't
purpose
it?
of this was supposed to be the opposite of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I know, and but I find it fascinating. I find it. I guess it's the same in anything. It's you know, you find your tribe, and then if you're that way inclined, you then start building yourself up as the fucking tribal leader, I suppose.
But it goes back to the very early days of Dwas and things like the Peter Haining books, the ones that Jeremy Bentham basically wrote, and so on and so forth. Because what happens in those early days of fandom organizing itself is a certain number of people are in charge of a certain amount of the flow of information, and they start to, whether deliberately or not, they just start to control the flow of information, don't they? So they become, to use the word, they become kind of the gatekeepers of Doctor Who fandom. And ever since then, I mean, it's not deliberate, and they will do things to try and sort of not have this become the cliche. But it's like Doctor Who magazine. You don't get to write for Doctor Who magazine if you don't, if you're not one of the editor's mates who goes down the pub with him or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's
They
like
are literally the Doctor Who information network. There it is.
Lovely callback. Nice.
Nice full circle moment.
Yeah. I'll go to bed thinking about how to finish Wood, right?
It is significantly past 9 o'clock, JR. I mean, is your kid all right?
He doesn't care. It's summer holidays.
Well, it is the last kind of 10 minutes. We said we'd call it a day at 10 o'clock so we can all safely get our buses home and all that kind of stuff. This has been a pleasure. This has been nice. Is there any other kind of like world-breaking kind of story that we want to deal with?
So we're going to review this, but I'm going to bring it up here because I don't know who's going to see it, who's going to be in the review, who's not, or who listening, because most of your viewers won't be watching or listening to Strangers in Space because we don't have listeners. We don't have listeners or viewers. So I might as well do this now.
Neither way.
Dylan's laughing, but it's true. So I watched last night because we're going to do Withnell and I.
Yes.
And I said, let's do it in a double bill with How to Get Ahead in Advertising, because also a few of us were talking about that. I watched How to Get Ahead in Advertising last night, and fuck me if that scene with the videotape in Blink doesn't come almost verbatim out of How to Get Ahead in Advertising.
I wondered what because you'd mentioned it in the group chat. I wondered what you meant, but yeah, okay. I need to rewatch it before. Is it Saturday?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm just sitting there. I've seen it before, and I've never noticed because I've probably not seen it since before Blink. And then as soon as it happens, I'm like, okay. And then, of course, on the Blu-ray of How to Get Ahead in Advertising, you've got an interview with the guy who does the production design for Withnell and I and How to Get Ahead in Advertising. Withnell and I, that's got 2 Doctor Who, Michael Pickwoad, Stephen Moffat. He's stealing it all. He's stealing it all from Bruce Robinson, isn't he? He's stealing his doctors from him. He's stealing his production designers from him. He's stealing his best scenes from him.
We should put Bruce Robinson in charge of Doctor Who next, shouldn't we?
Yeah, that'd be good. I still think I'd still like to see the 8th Doctor and the Schalke Doctor fight Zygons in a tea room
While completely shit-faced.
Well,
Yeah.
for those people who are Richard E. Grant fans, he does spend one scene in How to Get Ahead in Advertising with his bottom out, just walking around the room for 5 minutes with his bottom out.
Which
And Serverland's in it too. Jacqueline Pierce, she's got a part in it.
Richard E. Grant did say that if Schalke went to a series, he would insist that he had got his bottom out at least once a season.
So a funny thing I never realized before, even though I must have read the interview at the time, is there is an interview with Russell T Davies between series 1 and 2 of Doctor Who. And it's done by Benjamin Cook, and it's full of the kind of usual florid, sycophantic prose that sort of characterizes Ben Cook interviews.
And does it start with the paragraph, "Hi, I'm Benjamin Cook, and I'm on a train to meet Russell T Davies, who invites Doctor Who, and let me tell you what I can see out the window, and who's sitting on the train behind me, and what the driver's middle name is."
Not quite, but he does talk about turning up to Russell's flat, and there's the line, "I bet you say that to all the attractive TV time magazines." And I'm not saying that Russell T Davies has fucked Benjamin Cook. Not legally, anyway. I'm not saying that in a legal term, but
that is the rumor that we're all starting from this broadcast.
The interview. There's a bit in it where they talk about Scream of the Schalke. Oh, that's it, though. So he's asking who, you've got Stephen Moffat, Paul Cornell, Mark Gatiss. How did you decide like those are the kind of the guys that you wanted for the series? And obviously the answer to that is, well, they're the only ones that were professionally writing television at the time. But he says Paul Cornell, he felt bad about Scream of the Schalke. And he wanted to give Paul a chance to write for kind of televised Doctor Who because he felt that he'd torpedoed Scream of the Schalke, which Paul had put in so much love and work into. However, I hated Richard E. Grant. I thought he just took the money and run. And it was a terrible performance. Absolutely terrible. You can print that if you like. Flash forward to 2024. And he's at bloody Comic-Con going, oh well, yeah, the Schalke Doctor, yes, well, marvelous, isn't it? Ooh, wonderful. Ooh. He's a fucking hypocrite.
We got the actor in from New Head Scans.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they did. They got new head scans.
Yeah,
that's always
Schalke Doctor, that's for sure.
But then what was that San Diego Comic-Con? That gave us the moment where the guy asked the question who'd obviously never seen Scream of the Schalke, so stood up and asked Russell T Davies, so is the Scream of the Shakalaka doctor, is he a real doctor? He asked it in a way which was like, have I got more Doctor Who that I've got to fucking
because he
do
couldn't have
homework on now?
He couldn't have just asked Twitter, do I have to watch this? It's like he'd read about it and gone, I know. There's only 10 people that get to ask a question of the current Doctor Who showrunner. I think this is one of the important ones we need to know.
And he should have checked Twitter. He should have checked Twitter. Rather than calling it the Scream of the Shakalaka, it's the Scream of the it's a very easily readable phrase.
The worst thing was the person that didn't get to ask the question behind it because he was like the last one was just going to go, Russell, what the fuck was that season all about, mate?
Yeah, of all the questions that we wanted answered, I'll just close on this. It's funny to watch. I was watching just whilst I was trying to get the baby to sleep. I put on the official Doctor Who podcast on YouTube.
Is it? Are you sure it's the baby that you were trying to get to sleep?
I wanted everybody I know to go to sleep. It's really funny that what is such an on-brand podcast, there were definite moments where they were like deer caught in the headlights, where they just had no explanation for why a thing happened. with Empire of Death. That's what I really loved about it when they were talking about it. When they were talking about, oh well, I think it's a really great thing that Ruby's mum was just an ordinary woman. Cool. Why was Sutek so obsessed with that idea? And there was a genuine moment they cut to the two hosts and they looked like the eyes were darting around like, I have no professional way to deal with this media moment.
They're just looking for the runner in the corner who's got Wikipedia up with all the answers.
Well, so there is an amazing moment with Crystal D. Crystal D is one of the guests, and we know Crystal, and Crystal used to be the host of the original version of this RTD2 era in the podcast. And when they were talking about Sutek, and it comes up, she said, and it's voiced by, well, do you know? Now, Crystal absolutely knows who voiced Sutek in Empire of Death. Right, but she asked the host because she wanted to catch them out live on camera. She wanted them to. She wanted to catch them out. Now they did know because obviously, well, there'd probably been an edit moment where they were fucking
voice in their ear going, Gabriel Wolf.
passed about a thing. But it was so funny watching her ask a question that you know she knows the answer to. But she's just like, I'm going to now turn the tables 10 minutes into this to try and prove that you people.
I didn't realize the guy hosting the official Doctor Who podcast is the guy on Instagram that just sits in his little hoodie, just responding to people's Instagram reels.
Yeah.
That's how he got the gig.
That's the shape of it these days, isn't it?
So we've got a chance here.
Surely to God, at least we're talking about Doctor
Who. There is a thing now where the BBC are trying not to look left behind, isn't there? So there are certain ways in which there are certain things where they just go out, and I'm not saying that's what happened in this situation, but that they'll just go out and get people because they've been told you must get somebody who does such and such a thing. So just go out and grab somebody who does such and such a thing. It's almost like somebody from the BBC Studios office runs out into the street, screams, "Who's got Instagram?" And the first person who gets their hand up is in charge of a podcast.
They should do that with missing episodes then. If they want to find missing episodes, just fucking.
They're just trying to tap into an audience that we are not and do not understand.
Daniel knows.
They hate young kids. That is true.
This is the problem. Oh,
that's 10 o'clock.
That's fair enough.
Ding, 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 ding. Last orders before JR goes into his...
time, gentlemen, please.
It only takes 2 minutes. 6 minutes.
You're going to tell us the real location of Marco Polo, and Ben's just cut you off.
It's in that garage.
Well, I was going to tell you something really interesting about what Phil Morris said one time a little bit earlier, but you spoke all over me. I never got to say it. Somebody came in with a comment. It went, moment disappeared, and it's now 10 o'clock and the bell's gone.
No, it's all right. It's a Scottish pub, so there's 15 minutes to drink up.
You don't think we have that down here in Devon?
We don't fucking have it in London anymore. They ring the bell and they're like, "You need to finish your pint right now."
I was in the Chandos in Trafalgar Square the other night, and it's freaking ding, 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 fuck off. I'm like, mate, you poured me a pint 2 minutes ago. Like, what do you want me to do here?
Cunts.
I mean, the place where I used to... No, you can't use that language on this podcast. Everybody else has managed to get through this video without using that word, and you've brought it up at the end, you potty mouth. Unbelievable. The place where I used to go down the pub for our meets with Mark Cockram from the Human Palindrome from all of Time and Space, that now does Nepalese fast food for Just Eat. It's not a pub anymore, just a Nepalese fast food for Just Eat place.
I'm sorry for your loss, but Nepalese food's delicious.
We're verging very dangerously close to Dan Hadley territory.
Oh no, it's not the fact that it's Nepalese.
Whatever happened to the good old-fashioned British pub? Nowadays, my pub is selling Lebanese food for Just Eat, and I bet you that none of those delivery drivers are British. Anyway,
I think you were labouring under the misapprehension that I was complaining there, Mark.
Oh, good. Lebanese food's lovely. It wasn't Lebanese, was it, or Nepalese? What did you?
Nepalese.
I'm the racist.
Because there's an N, a P, and an L, and that fox. Yeah.
I think the point of that though is not that, oh my god, these Nepalese people have come in and stole our pubs. Is that we stopped using them, and so those buildings have been put to other purposes.
Absolutely, that's
kind of the point.
All of these things.
Yeah.
It's like Margate. I mean, I'll do this very briefly because we're going into extra time. But Cliftonville in Margate, is a shithole. It less so now, but it's a shithole.
It's all coming out now. After 10 o'clock, this is all the racy stuff you want to hear.
But Thanet,
It's
obviously,
not as much of a shithole as when Mark lived there.
I never lived in Cliftonville. How dare you? I've got more class. No, but Farage obviously campaigned in Thanet. There was a big thing about migrants in sort of areas of Margate and Thanet and Kent. Ultimately, what revitalised Cliftonville was all those Eastern European supermarkets and all those Eastern European businesses. So actually, they're paying your business rates. They're actually paying into the country. Get off the fucking arses. Good night.
Yeah, 100%.
It was fine until they turned the Forbidden Planet into a mosque, wasn't it? That didn't happen. That didn't happen, by the way.
You say that.
If anything, it was the other way around. Well, with that, that is the end of the first On The Time Lash local group meeting. We'll do it once a month. This is August, so we'll see you again for September. Just want to put a little pin in this so that we pick this up in September. Fraser Gregory, remind me to tell you about when Dan Hadley threatened me with legal action.
So next time, Fraser Gregory will be one of the guests on the On The Time Lash local group.
Thank you to everyone who was part of this, everyone watching, everyone who was who jumped on to be part of the local group. This was fun. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it again next month.
Thank
We
you for
will. And there'll be some new On The Time
plug
Lash
some things.
episodes at some point as well.
Yeah.
We've got a Star Beast thing recorded that I've not put out yet because we want to do it as a trilogy, but
Yeah.
we'll figure that out. We'll do some more in the time lash. We'll do some stuff.
Dylan and JR, what have you got coming up?
Well, I'll tell you something that happened way back in the mists of time. I got sued because of Doctor Who. That's a story for another time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Come back and join us with J.R. Southall and Fraser Gregory for Doctor Who, the litigation years.
Presented by Joe Wiley on Radio 2.
Was that the Doctor Who themes in Latin? Because it started off strong,
Yeah.
but it went a bit.
I forget how it goes.
Really, Sylvester McCoy playing out the spoons. We should
I
go.
get to the point. I
Plug.
got to the point. I got to the point in On The Time Lash where I pressed the stop button, and then I thought, oh shit, I don't know what happens now.
Awesome. All right, well, let's just call it a day. I'll end the stream. Thanks, everyone, for being part of this, and we'll see you next month and wherever you see us.
Good night.